This is the Dreadful Podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're back for part 3 of our Penny Dreadful Rewatch. We've started season 2, episodes 1 to 4. Welcome back, fellow Penny Faithful. This is TV Podcast Industries. We're watching Penny Dreadful Season 2, Episodes 1 to 4. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Darklings or Nightcomers. I am one of your other hosts, John.
And rounding up the group, I am your third host, Ray.
Welcome back, Ray. Good stuff. I like having someone rounding out the group again. It's always good.
Yes, exactly. A triangle. Which can then become a pentagram or something to feed into this witchy kindness that is season 2 Penny Dreadful.
Yeah, because you can't round it out a triangle, John. It's mathematically impossible.
No, I know. Yeah, exactly. Okay, a line.
Right.
Well, that's just 2. Anyway,
forget it. Well, we are very happy to have Ray back with us. We had the last 4 episodes without him, so delighted to have you back for season 2. Did you enjoy the ending of season 1? How about that? How about we start there?
It's just, everything about this show from the first time watching it to rewatching it exceeds expectations again. So no, I'm really enjoying it. Really enjoying the rewatch as well, and looking forward to season 2 because it's a very different beast.
Absolutely, it really is. And I think I have in my notes that it's just a lot creepier in season 2 than season 1. The idea that we're getting the story of the witches this time, as opposed to last time where we got the vampires, where the villains of the piece and were only seen when they were attacking our main heroes, whereas this time we actually get what's going on in the minds of the villains this season. So.
Yeah, I obviously tried to shut out this season for sure, given the creepiness of it, because my memory did not serve me well at all. There were things that I thought happened over a few episodes where it was just self-contained, such as episode 3. I certainly didn't think which is one of my points later on, the dollhouse of hell, came in it so early, as well as the baby autopsy, so to speak. So I was just like, oh my good God. So we have, rabbit feet all around the house. We have we've put a sort of a salt all around the perimeter of the property just to make sure that we are safe.
Absolutely. Thank you, Supernatural, for teaching us all of those tricks to protect our home. Yes.
Without Supernatural, we would be dead. I am a man of science. I kid you not, fellow Darklings. I really am. But yes, this is a creepy show fest, definitely.
Yeah, but I'm sure by now, even as a man of science, you could probably agree with Victor. If you've seen this much stuff happen to you in your life, you're going to agree that a lot is able to happen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, as we've been doing with all of our podcasts on Penny Dreadful, we're going to kick straight into it. These are shorter podcasts. We will probably talk for a lot longer when we get to season 4 of Penny Dreadful City of Angels, when it starts coming out from April 26th. We'll probably have full hour-long or more episodes about each episode of that show. But as we're doing a rewatch, and as you've all seen the episodes before, we're going to just pick out our main points, the things that we're interested in talking about from each of the episodes. These episodes are being released first on Patreon. We're releasing each individual episode over there, and then releasing the combined episodes on our main feed at tvpodcastindustries.com. But let's get into this episode, season 2, episode 1, Fresh Hell. This episode was directed by James Hawes. He directed some of the episodes in season 1, also directed some episodes of the wonderful Black Mirror. Go out and check those out. He loves directing the dark TV shows, obviously. Once again, starting off season 2, showrunner John Logan is writing each of the episodes this time again. It's always good having the team back together. It's kind of his vision. So seeing what he's taking from season 1 and bringing into season 2 is definitely one of the fun aspects of the show, isn't it? Yeah,
you definitely get the continuity, certainly in the writing here. And even with the aesthetic, it's really nicely played. So yeah, it's good that they had his vision for season 2, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have such a consistency and the continuity, because the things that John Logan writes throughout season 2, some of it references season 1 as well. And you don't have that kind of, integrating, information between the 2 seasons if you had a different showrunner or if you had different writers. So the idea that he's got a vision that he wants to portray, and he has this kind of holistic view of how he wants to where he wants to take the show. I think it's a really good thing. It just ensures that there's a tight kind of, storytelling to it.
Yeah, exactly. John, do you want to tell us about the storytelling? Tell us what the summary of episode 1 of season 2 is.
Sure. At the Mariners Inn, Ethan Chandler awakes from another of his blackouts to find those that threatened him are all dead. He joins Vanessa for a carriage ride to tell her about the blackouts. He has no idea what happens to him and what he normally finds when he awakens. He's decided to leave London, but before he can even finish his story, the carriage is attacked by 3 female creatures. Vanessa is clearly their target, but she and Ethan survive with only minor injuries. Sir Malcolm Murray returns, and she tells him the creatures spoke the Verbis Diablo, a dead language known as the Word of the Devil, which according to legend is the language Adam spoke in Eden after the devil tempted him. Vanessa says the women were nightcomers, witches. Meanwhile, Dr. Frankenstein is now ready to reanimate Brona Croft and needs only for the weather to cooperate. The creature finds a job at Putney's family waxworks, where the owner, Oscar Putney, is working on his latest tableau, the Mariners Inn Massacre. Elsewhere, Police Inspector Rusk investigates the murders at the inn.
We've all had that moment where you're waiting on the weather to cooperate with your grand master plan.
Absolutely.
Not usually waiting on lightning to reanimate a corpse, though.
Certainly at the moment where we are having storm after storm rolling in from the Atlantic. Yes. Was it Storm Hawes at the moment?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Plenty of opportunities there to reanimate.
If rain reanimates creatures, then we would reanimate an army by now.
Wind, rain, even more wind.
Exactly. Well, let's get into our big moments from the episode. John, what's your big moment from season 2, episode 1?
Well, I'm taking it really from, I suppose, where season 1 left off, and that is the massacre at the Mariner Inn. But importantly, I suppose here that there is a survivor. You know, we definitely saw on the with the mother and child, as well as the lamplighter and the lady in the park, that, you know, no one survived effectively Ethan's turn in the moonlight.
It's so good to be able to talk about being a werewolf now, isn't it?
But in this case, I suppose just because there were so many people getting pissed up in the inn that he didn't really do quite a good job of it. So there is a survivor, and we do learn later that it is one of the Pinkerton agents who was after Ethan, Mr. Roper. But I think importantly what it comes out with this is maybe that there's a bit more focus on Ethan, both in terms of his story, but also, you know, within the episodes, we have a new detective on the case, an Inspector Rusk, who has replaced the previous detective Galsworthy, who kind of seemed to be jaded by it, really. There was that moment in season 1 where he was visited by Sir Malcolm, and I suppose after the Jack the Ripper cases and just the general swigging of gin and general mayhem from the Industrial Revolution in London, that he kind of needs to retire at this stage. But this new detective, the Inspector Rusk, is certainly keener, shall we say. He seems a little more incisive in where this investigation is going to take him. I quite like that. I mean, certainly we see the survivor on the hospital bed pretty beaten up, or should I say scratched up, and it's kind of, it's one of those normal things. It's that matter of time until he recovers and, you know, until they can have a worthwhile conversation and chat. You know, they have a lot to talk about. Yeah. So, I like that. But I think as well, the focus is that, you know, we see that there is the public have taken this gory event into their imagination, whether it's through the newspapers, the Penny Dreadfuls. It's kind of a la Jack Ripper. There's nothing sells more than gore and gossip in that sense. And here, the focus of I suppose just the public imagination and the press. And to an extent, we see this then through, the Putney's family waxworks, where Mr. Putney, Oscar Putney, wants to kind of recreate, the massacre, because he sees this as his ticket to increase profits to compete with that blasted other waxwork house of Madame Tussauds. Yes. So we know which one sort of won out in the end. I don't think Putney's still exists, to be honest.
I was wondering, you've been to London a few times as well. Is this something around the London Dungeon? Because we have a place in London that is kind of the House of Horrors, which is very like Madame Tussauds, but focuses just on murders and deaths and all that kind of stuff, which has been around for hundreds of years, or 100 years as well. So
yeah, maybe that is
if the Putney family lost out and it just went to
like Putney Bridge is maybe. I don't know, but certainly maybe not quite as a recognizable brand as Madame Tussauds. So yeah, the French flair won out really, I suppose in that one.
Yeah.
But they're recreating this, and I think the other nice thing about this is that Caliban is inserted into the Putney's waxworks, and this is where he looks to get a job. This is kind of his replacement for the theatre. I think it marries quite well. I mean, I just keep thinking of the horror, The House of Wax. So to me, this makes sense that Caliban is going to another kind of slightly kooky vocation for himself. He can work down in the basement, away from prying eyes, creating these figures out of wax. We now have another name for Caliban as well. So we've had Demon, Monster, Caliban, and now it's John Clare.
Yes, chosen by himself.
Yeah, chosen by himself. So just fellow Darklings, if we interchange John Clare, Caliban, Demon, Monster, it's ultimately probably the same character.
Do we know where, did I miss it, where he chose John Clare from? Was that just plucked out of nowhere, or was that a reference to something?
It seemed to be on the spot because Oscar's wife, who kind of keeps the books and seems a pretty hardy soul. I thought she was the one that wore the pants actually, but then he does kind of, he does sort of reassert his, shall we say, his patriarchy on her. But certainly it seemed like it was straight off hand because he had to give her a name. And she may have just laughed at Caliban.
Not too much to talk about later episodes, but there is a moment where he says his name for the first time to Victor Frankenstein, and Frankenstein just rolls his eyes to heaven because it's not as great a name as he would have given to his creation, or even Proteus. Proteus's name chosen from Shakespeare was a great moment for Victor Frankenstein, where he gets that wonderful name for his new creation, and it's like John. What's another word? Clare, John Clare. I'll go for that.
Well, John is a great name.
John is a wonderful name.
So
very strong.
It's not overused at all. Yeah, it's not overused at all. I think it's fallen massively out of fashion. But anyway, there you go.
Very fashionable on our podcast. 1/3 of our hosts are called John.
Exactly.
I was just thinking, I was wondering if there was like a name tag that said John, or if there was like an eclair on the desk or something that kind of put things together.
I have
hey, John Clare.
I think, he just had to pluck it right there, I think. But I do think, and I wonder if, because Ethan does also take note of this new exhibition that is going to take place at the Putney's family waxworks. And I do wonder to what extent Caliban will become more integral to that company of Sir Malcolm. Certainly because as well, we do see Caliban meeting Vanessa as well in another one of the episodes. I know it's episode 2, but
we'll talk about it.
Yeah, but it's he seems like there's a few more possible connections here to this company, not just through Victor, where he might become a part of Sir Malcolm's band of merry misfits. So the reason why I brought this up is mainly because I suppose the point of view from Ethan, it's changed from season 1, and we are starting to see him as part of the storyline in the same way as you described the witches as opposed to the vampire. You know, it's not a sort of peripheral transient element. It's becoming more sort of interjected into the story, which I think is a good thing, because he's done this massacre and there has to be some kind of consequence. And I think the urgency of the new inspector also seems nice. You know, he is absolutely focused on getting whoever has done this, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, and you know, I suppose it's really important for the Ethan character. In season 1 and the previous parts, we talked about the fact that Ethan was the voice of the viewer. He was the eyes of the viewer, throughout the series, and didn't have as much of his own storyline as you would expect for one of the 3 major characters of the show, or the 4 major characters of the show. Towards the end of the season, it starts to build up to this idea that he is this werewolf that can eventually just come out and kill everything around him. What I did like about how this was introduced is, remember, there was only 2 people in that room that Ethan wanted to actually kill, which were the Pinkertons that were after them, and one of them still alive. So he's not a very effective weapon as such, you know. He has killed everybody in that room except for one of the only 2 people that can identify him. So I suppose he's not in control is what it tells you about the werewolf. He is able to turn into this creature, this beast, but unlike the vampires or unlike the witches, he's out of control. He's slaughtering everything around him, but not getting the one thing that he wanted to get. So
yeah, he's I think, and you see that with his reactions and the way he talks to Vanessa in the carriage as well, about how he's got no control, how he's got these inner demons himself. And he's, to a point, I mean, just as scared as everyone else, who's, you know, walking around London with these murders happening around. So, very much so. Very much liken him to, you know, say like the Incredible Hulk or Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde, how this other physical being, where he blacks out and it's a totally different entity. So I mean, just going further to your point as well, the wolf is totally out of the bag now from season 1, you know. So I think the only way to progress Ethan as a character would be to, establish that, which they did, which John Logan did perfectly in the end of season 1. And then, so where do we take it now? And so I think it's really great. You have this added dynamic of Inspector Rusk with this kind of forensic investigation now, which is a different part of the Penny Dreadful storytelling. I think that's he's a very interesting character, very intense kind of guy.
He is.
Very.
Yeah.
But he's very good as well. And tying it also with the horror elements, even just the verbal descriptions of, this guy hasn't got much of a face anymore. And, you know, he won't be able to talk to you till maybe tomorrow because he's so disfigured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then seeing all the bandages, that itself has a very horror element to it, and a very kind of, I don't know if I can, what is under it? What is under those bandages?
Exactly.
It's,
unlike the picture of Dorian Gray, I actually don't want to see what's under those bandages, I must admit.
I think one of the interesting things of Rusk as well is that, he has that conversation with, I think, the owner of the inn, who wants to kind of sell it off as quickly as possible. And because they want to put up tenements, and he just goes, more brick, soon there will be no wooden buildings left. You know, wood has its character and tells a story. And it seems like he also has this kind of longing for, dare I say, the old ways. Not to say that he's a supernatural being or he's got any elements like that. Certainly I don't get that at the moment. I think he's very much about, as you say, this modern detective using the latest tools available to him, sort of in Victorian Britain. But there's some kind of thing that he still looks back, or his terms of reference are still as a kid, you know, the old ways, to some extent, or there's a nostalgia there to that way. And that even though he's bought in to cause he says that he has come from the army. It looks, he used to be a soldier. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he's bought into new technologies like repeater rifles or all this kind of stuff, but there's something there that he may be a bit more open to the possibility of what happened in the Mariners Inn rather than just simply a straightforward serial killer, like I think Detective Goldsworthy would have been thinking.
Right. I just took it that he had this concept of Wood leaving behind something for him to investigate. So he's a forensic detective, so Brick doesn't have the same kind of investigative abilities for him, I suppose.
But I think he's more open.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Just quickly as well, with that point, I love it as well. It's a good point, John. But it's also, for me, it was more like a nostalgia within the nostalgia. Mm-hmm. I mean, so we're watching this and everything's so dated, outdated. And he's coming in and he's saying, "Oh, Brick, that's so new and modern, why aren't they using the tried and true method of timber?" And so we're thinking, wow, he's really got the old traditional ways.
Yeah.
So I love that layer of us being kind of detached even further from him, because he is so set in a traditional sense, whilst we are way modern. So
where's the steel and glass?
Exactly. Well, let's move on to our next big point for the episode. Ray, do you want to kick us off with your one?
Yeah, look, I took a big juicy one here. I went for the introduction of the new big bads, the witches. I call them in the notes the Witches' Coven. Mm-hmm. There's obviously a group of them. We get the introduction to them not only visually, aesthetically, which is truly terrifying, and the way they move is all very supernatural. But we get a little bit more of the back history to them, and establishing them. I guess they're established a little bit more than what the vampires were initially in season 1. Mm-hmm. So it's a very different take. I was about to mention also as well, between season 1 and season 2, there's always a risk of not living up to the standards of the first season, because generally they'll pick the best villain, and it'd be the vampires. So how can we top that? Mm-hmm. And I feel they're doing a really good job in season 1 in establishing the witches, because number one, they just look as scary as hell.
Absolutely.
They're talking in a devil tongue in the Verbis Diablo. Mm-hmm. You get the interaction with Vanessa. So again, there's an immediate connection. I love that bit where she, similar to season 1, where she stands down that creature. Mm-hmm. She starts speaking in the Verbis Diablo and she freaks out one of the witches. Yeah. And so they kind of leave. So it's again, what is this mystery with Vanessa? What, how is she connected with them? So it's basically that, as well as later on in the episode, we get introduced to, how should we call her? I mean, Madame Carly, she was in the first season. Yeah. She's referenced as Mrs. Poole. Yeah. Now, but she's definitely like the head of the witches' coven. It seems, the introduction of her in that bloodbath, with the dead, I don't know, would have been maybe her daughter or some sacrifice or offering in the front. Again, really does set the tone for these. I mean, looking at it, and in that scene with her and her daughters, they are really, 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 really evil.
They really absolutely are, yeah.
Like, they really do set a more sinister tone with the Gothic villa, as you say, the bathing in blood of a victim, and also the fireplace made with bones or the bone decorations, the skeleton decorations. It's really weird. It's funny. Derek and I went to Rome and we went into a Capuchin church in Rome where they also made literally everything in the crypt out of bones. Where it was like the altars were made out of bones, the light sockets were all the decoration, the ceiling friezes, and it was just like So, okay, these are witches one step removed from monks, effectively, or the Capuchin monk order.
And they're made of the bones of former Capuchin monks.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's what happens when you die. We'll make an altar out of you, kind of thing. I don't know whether I'd sign up for that religion.
And it's kind of that thing, I suppose. You know, you kind of think, oh my goodness, this is so outrageous, maybe, or you go, this is, you know, someone's taking this too far. And yet in the real world, fellow Darklings, and Penny Faithful, there are places where this kind of stuff is. And I think that's the thing about it, which is most creepy, is that it's not, too far from reality. I think as well, Helen McCrory, I just love her in this season. The power that she exudes as this head witch is just, fantastic. And I do like her little sort of deadly ring, that she puts to use on her failed daughter. Certainly that's pretty cool. I think they've all got them probably, but, it's a fairly, kind of almost like an assassin's weapon. You know, she's kind of this beautiful, flower that sort of distracts you, and then the sting of the thorn comes out with a wave of the hand. It is really, really nice.
I truly get the feeling that after seeing her performance as Madame Callie in episode 2 of season 1, they kind of went, if we get a second season, she's going to become a major character, because there's only one more scene that we see that character in, and it's at the end of season 1, where she meets Malcolm and introduces herself again as Evelyn Poole, and that the whole Madame Callie persona is just something that she does to earn a little bit of cash, because that's what people expect from her, kind of thing. But actually, Evelyn Poole has a much deeper and more rich history of this show. So, introducing her at the start of season 2 as being a much more evil character than we had possibly expected from that little bit of interaction. We knew there was something sinister about her when she introduced herself to Malcolm in that supposedly chance encounter that she had with him in season 1, because she kind of looks after him going, I'll see you again, kind of thing. So nice how they've built her into this character.
I think what's kind of good as well is you get that sense of the connection. And I do like the fact that Vanessa's like genuinely a little freaked out by the sense that she is getting. You know, she gets in the park where you see Madame Callie sort of directing enchantments towards her. And you know, she's frightened. I like that conversation that she has with Sembene, where she asks, do you believe that the past can return? And he just is like, I believe it never leaves us. It's who we are. And of course we see that in episode 3 then, just that connection, I suppose, with this coven, although she doesn't know that yet. So I like the fact that this is kind of really, freaked her out, from her past, in terms of, you know, it's reignited her being able to speak the, Verbis Diablo as well, that it's kind of almost taking control of her a bit. All these things are kind of automatically kind of coming out from her. And I think in the carriage, it kind of startles one of those nightcomers as well, where they're like, oh, she's speaking to us. Wow. You know, finally I can have a conversation in my own tongue, without, not just with my sisters kind of thing. Want to go for a coffee, Vanessa? I don't know.
And also as well, the tying in with the religion as well, to give in a bit of to grounding it a little, in the sense that, I love the fact that you see the witches with, is it the devil's claw? The marks of the devil on them as well. And so that ties in with Satan. And also the Verbis Diablo, which was a corruption of the angelic speech. So it all talks about that and links it to, you know, the angels and devils. Is very cool indeed. At the end, and we also know that, you know, they are witches and they do dabble in stuff, but they're not just like, stirring a cauldron and cackling away. There's a lot more to them, and they serve a master, right? And so we're getting a sense of an even more evil master even more so than, in season 1, this is like Lucifer himself. This is the devil. So you can't get any more evil than that.
Absolutely.
There is part of me that wishes they were just stirring a cauldron, to be honest, because they are a kind of, level 11 in terms of freakishness, for sure.
Yeah.
On the Verbis Diablo as well, Ray, I really like the end of this episode where you have Vanessa praying in Latin to the cross with the candles, as she's kind of thumbing a bloody scorpion sort of image on the floor. And sort of counter to that, you have, Madame Carly or Evelyn Poole, giving her own prayer to Lucifer as opposed to God in the Verbis Diablo. I thought that was really nice touch. You got the sense that somewhere, probably over Hyde Park, that this mystical energy was battling in terms of the force of their prayers or something. I thought it was quite good.
Yeah. To be honest as well, I had to smirk a little at Evelyn Poole when she was chanting, just when her eyes kind of rolled back and she kind of went cross-eyed. It did, to me, it looked a little funny. It kind of broke the tension a little. But I mean, of course, the overall effect was there and what she was doing, and a good ending as well, similar.
Yeah. One thing I will say about the carriage scene, and similar to yourself, right? There's a moment when Ethan and Vanessa are having their conversation in the carriage, and they hop in and they go for a drive around the city of London. As we talked about before, this is filmed in Dublin, mostly in Dublin Castle, which is a very small cobbled area of Dublin. And I was kind of wondering, what are they going to do here? Because they can't go very far, because there's only a small square in the center of the city that has a cobbled street. So I was looking at the back. Honestly, I was a little bit distracted. I was looking at the back while they were having this conversation, and I was going, they're going to do that green screeny thing where they have some background street of London projected in the background as the carriage is going on. So because of that, when the attack happened, I did jump quite sizably off the couch when the attack happened, because I wasn't prepared for it at all. I thought this was going to be an exposition scene to set up season 2 as the witches attack, destroy the carriage. And then we have that scene afterwards where they get outside and see the slaughtered horse and slaughtered driver on the ground. It was shocking and fantastically done to just be distracted by a moment of exposition and then have the slaughter going on outside. Really good.
And they also, the Nightcomers have the reverse Jim Carrey, superpower from Bruce Almighty, where instead of sort of going back and getting undressed, they actually can wear anything they want. So they start off naked and their clothes kind of form around them.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. I also like they can kind of appear however they want to. I think that's a really cool superpower. Yeah. Let's close out with the big moments for season 2, episode 1, with probably another one of the biggest moments from the episode. There's actually 3 main points, which just really works well for these episodes when there's 3 of us on board. Cause the final big moment is Victor bringing back Brona. Brona is one of the characters that we all loved in season 1. I think I can easily say that she's a great character, played by Billie Piper, with a very tragic story as she dies at the end, or is murdered by Victor to be brought back to fulfill his promise to Caliban of creating his bride. What I love about this is the twist in it, which is that Victor is possibly not bringing her back for Caliban. He is possibly bringing her back for himself in some ways. There are some very creepy moments as he talks to the corpse of Brona, saying, I'm going to really miss these conversations that I'm having. This is not a dialogue. Yes. It's a bit of a monologue from you, Victor, talking to the dead body of a victim. Some very creepy moments as he touches her body, as he's waiting for the time when the weather's going to be right to bring her back alive. I guess we're going to be sending these 2 characters on a collision course, Victor and Caliban, over the heart of Brona, I suppose, as we go on through these episodes, because it seems like he may not want to give her up. I think there's a mention in season 1 from one of the characters, Vanessa, I think, mentions that she thinks that he's a virgin, that he's never had a lover before. And in this season, it feels like he is kind of transferring that emotion a little bit towards this innate body that isn't able to have any kind of dialogue with him, that is only there to serve whatever purpose he is trying to put into it, I suppose. a way to describe it? He just seems very, very creepy about this relationship he's having with the corpse. But it is quite a big moment.
I mean, and just the fact as well that he's the one that killed her, like Bryna Croft. And so he's found this attraction in her dead corpse now.
Yeah.
And I guess it's that power thing as well of he's actually bringing her back. So that might be all kind of wrapped around this idea of this infatuation with her and also this opportunity for him to explore this side. As you mentioned, he's a virgin and, he has this kind of budding attraction towards her. But very, I'll put it in these notes as well, very, very creepy indeed. It's a very, I don't know, it's a little bit of a swerve for his character. He's always been a little, unstable, like in season 1. But this kind of really takes it further.
Very much so, very much so. I think the character is probably described as someone that has more time for the dead than the living. He enjoys his time around the dead creatures and the science that he works on, rather than his time around explaining it to people who don't understand what he's involved in. But definitely taking a bigger step for Victor in season 2.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of I can't see it ending well between Bryna and Caliban at all, to be honest. I think there's something there where Caliban thinks that this is being done for him, and I'm not entirely sure that Victor is wanting to do it for him. You know, their relationship is rocky anyway, so it'll be interesting to see how that kind of progresses. To be honest, again, I think I like the kind of the fact that Caliban says "Good night, Creator," to the man of science, and not wholly so, but I find that really quite interesting. And of course, we see that he has actually changed or updated his process, so she is now in a water bath. And we learn a little later that this is to reduce the effects of the electricity, so that they can recover quicker. Because when, the lightning comes and the storm finally arrives, I find that really kind of great moment. It's really energetic. It really kind of mirrors the idea of lightning, with the two of them rushing around to get all the connectors done, that lightning in a bottle element. And then she begins to, sort of get reanimated and sort of rises out of the water, a bit like, almost like the Lady in the Lake a bit, in that sense from King Arthur. But, I just thought this was really nice. And the urgency of Caliban saying, "Let her live," shouting up at the sky, that this, he's pinning all his hopes on Bryna and assuming that she will have affection for him. And I think that's where, even without the interjection of Victor, that could end badly, if she has no feelings towards him. But there's something suspicious around Victor, certainly with his pre-animation sort of, behavior around, Bryna, to suggest that, yes, he's doing it. It looks like he's helping Caliban, because otherwise he'll be killed, or people he loved will be, but he's not totally on board with helping out his first creation.
Yeah, I found there to be a little murky, as you're mentioning in there, John, because it isn't as clear cut as you mentioned as well. It was funny. I was thinking as you were recounting it, he did have those monologues with with Bryna's corpse while she was in there, but at the same time, he does ask Caliban, John Clare, if I do this for you, will you, does that release me from your constant stalking? So it seemed like he really wants to do it for Caliban to kind of get him off his back. But at the same time, he's kind of doing it for himself. So there's a little bit of conflict there.
Exactly.
And it's which one, I mean, obviously the latter is more important to him because he kind of pursues that. But, I found that it's like I was a little confused then because, and I loved, Caliban's response to that as well, saying, you might as well ask, can you get your soul ripped apart from you or something? We're all bound on the same wheel of pain. I love that. I love the language that they use with each other. It really rings true to their characters because they're both very poetic and very artistic.
Absolutely.
In that sense. And going back to that point, it's hilarious that, John did pick, John Clare as his name because he's so well read, and he loves, and that's all he can come up with is a little funny.
Yeah.
But I found that thing with Victor, there were two conflicting things there. I think John Logan's done well to kind of balance it, but like in retrospect, thinking about it, it does potentially conflict with each other. These thoughts of Victor.
It's almost like Victor wants to do it and get it done, so he gets Caliban off his back, but he certainly doesn't want to make it easy for Caliban with Brona. It's almost that kind of, it's like a spiteful, it's like, I've done it, there you go,
right.
Now she's yours, good luck with that kind of thing.
But I do think Caliban's response probably does influence that. As you say, Caliban responding, saying, what would Frankenstein be without his monster? I'll be here and I'll always be close no matter what you do for me, kind of thing. Like if he'd said, I'll create your bride, you can take her, and off we're going to go to Spain and we'll leave you alone. Maybe Victor Frankenstein would kind of go, actually, maybe I have an impetus to do this now, but all that's going to happen is they're going to be living down the road looking in on him every day. That's not great.
Yeah. Why Spain?
I don't know.
I was like, ye oldie Costa del Sol? I don't know.
I actually think Ethan said that's where he was going to go, didn't he? Is that one of the places he said he was going to go to Spain and then to Romania, I think was the two places. So it was in my head.
I was thinking Nice, maybe.
Maybe. Off to France. Everybody fits it in France. It'd be grand. That was it for my big moment for the episode. Guys, any other notes that we haven't talked about for episode 1? I'm sure there's hundreds.
First off, I mean, I thought the opening to the season was brilliant. For me, there was a lot of kind of, I don't know, metaphorical meaning to it, because it's not really focused on like the snow and the weather that much, other than the very beginning when Vanessa's walking through that beautiful pure white snow.
Yeah.
And to me, it's symbolic of, after season 1, there's been a certain level of closure and resolve. But then we see Evelyn Poole start kind of chanting away and kind of messing up with Vanessa. So I just thought it was a very beautiful opening. The way it was shot as well in that white snow, it was just really nice.
Beautiful. Yeah. Really, really good start. It's like a new clean slate, I think, would be the way starting off a new season that way. And I love that it doesn't take long. It's only about 30 seconds. And then suddenly you have Evelyn Poole chanting in the background going, I'm right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. John, anything from you?
It was just, I suppose, to close out season 1 a bit, actually, that Malcolm and his wife Gladys do bury Mina, and that they are still both married, importantly here, that Malcolm's still married to Gladys, but in no way, shape or form is this a loving marriage. I think she certainly makes that clear, where she goes, we have no more children for you to save or kill. And, both Peter and Mina now 6 feet under. John Logan could have done a zombie Penny Dreadful season 3, where Mina and Peter come out to haunt Gladys and do the zombie apocalypse in Victorian Britain.
Maybe.
That would have been kind of interesting.
I have a feeling that they're still haunting Malcolm.
Well, no, exactly. And that was the only thing between them, was their children, I suppose. But that they are together because, again, they're, even though we've talked about things like the brothels and the illegal dogfighting previously, there is still a social acceptability here, and to prevent perceived or real slight on their names, they are staying together for social status, effectively. And I think this is something that definitely comes through again in these first 4 episodes, which I found really interesting. That it's that contradiction in Victorian society of this quite moralistic very old school now, as we would see it. It's almost the idea of dowries and marrying into land and titles and wealth. And we have a lot of that still here, and just the social restraints that puts on people. Yet at the same time, there is this exploration of more narcissistic and sort of activity is less constrained by the parables of the New and Old Testament, I suppose.
I like it. Yeah, I think it's one of those things within Victorian society that you can basically do whatever you want as long as it doesn't affect your standing in society. So you can set up a dogfighting ring if you want to, as long as the regular public don't know that you've just done that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So it's a very intriguing look back at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I find Malcolm such a complicated character. Just there's so many layers to him, so many contradictions to him as well, and a large part of it is, as you mentioned, this social standing, him remaining true and being bound to be married with Gladys, although there is no love. He mentions it time and time again. There's no love between them anymore. That's effectively just dead, and the fact that he has been out to save his children, yet he's the one that's killed them. It's such a strange thing to try to get your head around what is going on inside this guy's head. Because there is a sense of duty that he has, but there's also a sensibility that he has as well. I mean, like with Mina being what she was, so he had to do that. So I don't know. I just find out of everyone, he's the most complicated to really crack and to. I'd hate to be him. Out of all of them, I'd hate to be kind of him.
Yeah,
I'd say.
Right.
And I think as well, it just that relationship, even though it's very peripheral, is probably really important because we do have Madame Carly in her den, I suppose, her coven, saying, sort of giving the orders that she will go after Vanessa and Sir Malcolm, whilst her daughters should focus on the lichen of Ethan. They definitely know that he is something supernatural, and not just pure human.
Yeah, absolutely. Shall we leave it there for our discussion on episode 1 of Penny Dreadful season 2?
Yeah, that's all the notes I've got.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We'll take a little break and we'll be back with our discussion of episode 2 of season 2 after this message from Ray of Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast.
Hi, I'm one of the High Priests of Khonshu, Ray, and I have the sacred privilege of providing you, the loony listener, with a podcast honouring Marvel's very own Moon Knight. So join me and a host of others at Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, or support the show by becoming a Patreon member. Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. It's time to get your Khonshu on.
Welcome back, fellow Penny Faithful. This is Derek on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about Penny Dreadful Season 2, Episode 2, Verbis Diablo.
Yes, hello, fellow Darklings. This is John as well. Dare I say it? Looking forward to getting into the Devil's Tongue. That seems a little dodgy to me. But yes, can't wait to get into this one.
And welcome everyone. Hello, I'm back. Looking forward to talking all things dark and evil and, generally horrible.
Yeah.
Dreadful. I should say dreadful.
Definitely dreadful.
Yeah. This is definitely dreadful.
Yes, let's jump straight into our discussion about Verbis Diablo. Episode, once again, directed by James Hawes and written by showrunner John Logan. John, do you want to give us the synopsis for this episode of Penny Dreadful?
Sure. Vanessa survives a nighttime visit from the Three Witches, and Sir Malcolm promises to do his best to protect her. He shows her a soup kitchen and medical clinic of sorts where he donates some of his time and money. There, Vanessa meets the creature. Sir Malcolm meets Mrs. Poole in a department store where she mesmerizes him. Ethan, Vanessa, Dr. Frankenstein, and Sir Malcolm invite Ferdinand Lyle to translate the Verbis Diablo for them from the British Museum. He tells them that in the 11th century, a monk named Father Gregory claimed he was possessed by a demon who spoke to him in the Verbis Diablo. He wrote down what he was told, and those artifacts are now contained in the British Museum. Dr. Frankenstein, meanwhile, has successfully reanimated Brona, now called Lily, but he struggles with his own feelings for her. She quickly learns to speak and has lost her accent, but has no memory of her past life. Dorian Gray meets Angelique, who works in a brothel. Finally, Inspector Rusk visits Warren Roper, one of the men who was severely injured in the attack at the Mariners Inn. At this stage, the doctors have no idea if he will ever again be able to speak. Yes, the cat's got your tongue, or in this case, a massive werewolf.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
Ripped it out, no doubt.
Maybe. But hopefully he'll be able to speak in future. It will be bad times for Ethan if he does actually tell the story of what actually happened to him on that day. But again, intriguing that the person that's left alive is one of the Pinkertons who was following Ethan. So he's very unlikely to tell the story of what happened, isn't he? If anybody else had been left alive, they may have told the story about this man who transformed. Oh my God, scary, scary. But this Pinkerton who was on the trail of Ethan, he's not going to give up his quarry just because he was attacked and lost half his face.
No, exactly. I'm just wondering how Cherry Phosphate may react if he takes a swig of that into his kind of presumably destroyed face.
Oh, he'll definitely need a few ice chips.
A fizzy face he will have. Yeah.
Just because you looked up cherry phosphate because you had no idea what it was.
No, I didn't.
Nobody else remembers the line at all. But he will need some ice chips. That was the other thing. Ice chips are a little more important.
Although cherry phosphate, the precursor to the worst drink ever, Cherryade. Yeah, awful.
I like it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, this episode features probably the scariest moment from John's history of watching television. And I think he mentioned at the start of our episode 1 of season 2 discussion that he didn't realize this moment happened so early in the show. But should we get it out of the way now, John, and allow you to talk about your big moment from this episode that still has you waking up screaming?
I suppose this is a bit of a juicy one as well, to be honest. Yes, it is the dollhouse from hell, or dare I say it, the dollhouse in the basement of the Witch's Coven. I didn't realize this was introduced so early, and dare I say, I didn't realize that the baby thing, or I think I should call it the baby autopsy, came in here. But yes, I suppose we do get to the heart of the matter with this, and that heart being a baby's heart. But this is both, like, to me, it is amazing and incredibly just diabolical, gruesome, and it is evil personified. And if we're talking about if we're talking about the devil's tongue, certainly, this has an appropriate amount of darkness around it. And dare I say, it'd probably be too much possibly for some viewers.
Yep.
But effectively one of Evelyn Poole, or Madame Carley's, daughters has, kidnapped, a baby off the underground, killing the baby's mother and father, and has brought it back to the coven where, Madame Carley is now about to use the heart of this baby to effectively bring to life a doll that she has made. So effectively, I've kind of, in my notes, it's almost like an intricate voodoo doll. It is to bring the inanimate to life here. Just the way this is done, I mean, the camera following Helen Macquarie down the spiral staircase with the darkness, really nicely done. The music is appropriately atmospheric, and I do like that they've introduced a choral element, because that really does add to I suppose the wibbly wobbliness of it, the frightening, being kind of off balance, that the voices, it feels as though Madame Carley is not acting alone, even though she is. It's like there is some kind of unseen presence, i.e. her master, watching her and directing her in this by having this choral. And I think it's always, it's always good to have a bit of choral to add a godliness or devilness to a piece of music. This ceremony that she is doing to reanimate this doll of effectively Vanessa, and it's just
very
really
lifelike as well, isn't it?
Yeah, really lifelike, really creepy. There is a moment where it's spinning around and you just have the doll's eyes, her sort of dissecting the baby, so this autopsy to get the heart. But there is one moment where it focuses on a doll who's got these big eyes with I shouldn't laugh, with the mouth open, and it's like, I think we all had that expression on our faces exactly. As we were watching this scene. But again, Helen Macquarie, the commitment, because, you can imagine getting your script going, what do I have to do?
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
like what, and the commitment of her, the sheer sense of her as a force of evil really comes across here, in this creepy doll-filled room. I mean, dare I say, I hate dolls. Clowns are a walk in the park.
Oh, yeah.
Dolls, certainly these kind of dolls or the Victorian dolls, like, get out of there. If anyone has them, they're going straight in the tip. And from my side, because it's like,
massive
really
compliments
creepy.
to the set designer and,
Yeah.
and the prop
Oh,
maker for this
absolutely.
episode, because they do look realistic. I don't know whether they went out to shops and bought, or out to museums and took old style dolls, but they look realistic for the time. But it's just seeing the walls as the camera pans upwards as well as side to side, where this room is a very high room filled with dolls from floor to ceiling, and they're all watching on. And then you get the impression by the end of the scene, because the heart is inside this Vanessa doll, that potentially every single one of those dolls is another person in London or around the world being controlled by this coven of witches.
Yeah, or a victim of some sort.
Yeah.
I think as well, just that final moment, which is right at the end, where Vanessa kind of almost takes a stumble forward and a breath in, as that connection is made between her and this doll, which is now under the control of the witch coven, is really interesting. And I mean, for Madame Carly as well, she seems to despise Vanessa.
Yeah.
And it's maybe because her master favors Vanessa above her, and she realizes she's having to do his bidding to effectively replace herself almost, maybe in the food chain, or at least put someone a peg higher. So you really get a sense of hate from Madame Carly towards Vanessa here, and it being done in this doll form as well. You just wonder what she will do. But as I say, it is almost like a voodoo doll, I suspect. I'm expecting pins or whatever going into it, or whatever she's going to do to it. Yeah.
Kind of really does take it to the next level from the voodoo dolls as well. Like, you expect it to be just like a stuffed doll with some pins, as you say, John. But true to the age, when she opens up the doll, there's a lot of mechanics in there as well, and she actually connects the baby's heart to all those mechanical bits and pieces in there. So it's a lot more complicated than just your run-of-the-mill voodoo doll.
Yeah. One of those things. We all have them. Former bosses,
Exactly. But it was so good, as you say, Derek, as well. The way that the set designers arranged the order of them as well. I don't know about you, but each time I was going, oh my gosh, that was scary.
Yeah.
Oh god, that's even more terrifying than the last one. And it got progressively worse and more horrifying as we went along. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when you get to that one doll with its eyes wide open and mouth wide open, I think it's just placed perfectly. It's at that moment where you're going, it can't get any worse, or it can't. But it does kind of speak to that thing of coming to this show with your own perspective and your own experience of shows like this and movies like this that you've seen before. I certainly expected that what was happening here was they were effectively going to adopt the baby into their coven for some reason. I didn't think it was going to be a sacrifice and take the heart out. I thought they were stealing the baby for a purpose. Maybe raising it within their coven was kind of the idea that was going through my head. Yeah. So when it happened, when she arrives with a brown bag that's closed, I suddenly realized, oh, okay, that's the dead baby that she's brought with her to this.
I
location.
just kind of thought they were going to eat it for some reason.
Yes,
just because she'd been bathing in blood, I was like, this isn't going to end well for this little thing.
But even eating it, I don't know. That's going to sound really bad. I'm trying to work out how best to say this. But even if they were eating the baby, I don't think we would have gotten the scene of the baby dissection that happens, which I do think is still massively shocking. I'm a horror fan. I've watched a lot of horror movies and I haven't seen something like that in there. And I do think this may have been a moment in season 2 where casual viewers of Penny Dreadful who kind of can dismiss the horror in some episodes, that might have been a moment where they went, whoa, okay, too far.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose again, it's the idea of infanticide anyway has been a part of culture as this old sect. The use of sacrifice as well for what you would think of as being a spiritual, adding to a spiritual plane or for appeasing the gods. It's something that's not, I mean, this did seem like a sacrifice, but to an end of sort of control. And I suppose sacrifice, whether from the Aztecs and from all the Egyptians, these routine ritual sacrifices was about controlling the population. Here it's more specific and more supernatural, but again, not to say that it isn't shocking, it is, but it's something that is not unusual. Well, this is, but the killing of a baby for some kind of sacrifice, or a newborn, possibly.
I think another show would have just dealt with it in dialogue. I think that's
maybe.
Did you kill that baby? Yeah, we did. Grant, move on.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I mean, when she had the baby's body out there as well, I was thinking, how far are they going to take this? And when she took the knife out, it's like, wow, I'm sure this would turn off many, many casual viewers. It is, I wouldn't say crossing the line, but it's pushing the boundary.
It really is.
For kind of horror. And again, well done to the actor for doing it.
I mean,
it's a very strange thing to do.
Definitely. Dare I say it as well, Ray, that in terms of your main point for this, I was there going, I really want to do the lighter-hearted part of this rather than the other heart part of this, which is the teeny tiny baby heart.
The darker heart. Well, speaking of which, Ray, do you want to take us on to your main point for this episode?
I picked this one because this one threw me. I mean, I have watched the series before, but it's been a while, so I kind of forgot. And again, Ferdinand Lyle actually in cahoots with the Witch's Coven. I thought, wow, okay, here we go. He kind of lost a little bit of respect from me as well, because I was enjoying his character so much, and then it's like, no, you can't be doing this to the team. But we find out from Evelyn Poole that they have some stuff on him that threatens to reveal. Nothing's really divulged, but did you get the sense that there are a lot of, photographs or some sort of evidence of something outside his marriage?
Yeah.
Quite
a lot of
sort
things
indiscretion.
outside his marriage, I think, is kind of what comes across. It's, I think when they say they have photographs, it's just, you see one of them going, so many photographs. Like, you were so indiscreet. I think it's just one of those moments where it's like, if you didn't want this to be found out, you really should have taken one photograph, not hundreds.
I think I love that he does pluck up the courage to sort of counter Evelyn Poole here, but it's around his hair color, and she just laughs it off. And it's like, my hair color is natural, and she just laughs. And I just thought that was great. A bit like you, Ray. Yeah, I had forgotten that there was this association, where he was effectively being blackmailed, really, I suppose, by the coven. But I thought he was excellent in this episode and brought the light relief, for sure, to this episode, which it needed, given what we've just discussed about under my point.
Yeah. I mean, with also his role for the rest of this episode as well, it's really good because it sets up that you kind of scrutinize his every action now after it being revealed that he's kind of in there with the Witches Coven. So I found that really effective because where he was just comic relief, now you're kind of like, you know, you kind of question everything he does, because he says he wants to misdirect them. So, he's there, he's responsible for actually helping them decipher this Verbis Diablo from the artifacts from the museum, which they were, you know, hoping to get. What's he going to do? He's not going to translate it properly or not. Although you do get Ethan, who is well versed in Latin as well. And Sir Malcolm, who knows his Arabic. So, there are things that he can't kind of, pull the wool over. Some of the,
I do kind of like that, even with the blackmail, that effectively Evelyn Poole's saying to him, oh, well, go ahead and translate the whole thing, because it all leads to me in the end anyway. I like that she kind of has spoilt the whole investigation piece that's going to be happening, because they'll all end off on her doorstep anyway. So just let them go ahead, let them decipher it, let them take weeks to do that. It all leads to me. I'm the final endpoint. I think that's quite interesting. But Lyle is a favorite character, definitely. And in this episode, he has some fantastic moments. His flirtation with Ethan is hilarious from the first moment he arrives, when he goes, "Oh, you're gigantic. I look positively Lilliputian in your shadow." And then he hears his voice and goes, "Oh, American, I can't contain myself," you know? Fantastic.
Him fawning over Ethan is just so good. Well, the other thing he says, because I think the writing here for Mr. Lyle, is great. He turns to Ethan and he goes, "Mischief is best done in small groups. Isn't that right, Mr. Chandler?" As though, we're expecting some mischief from the two of them. It's all very, a little entendre, in this double entendre, from Mr. Lyle, presumably related to the photographs that Madame Carly has, as well. But, the fawning, over Ethan is really good. What's the other one where he says he will bring both guns, and it elicits this real sort of just laughter from Mr. Lyle as he's going to bring both his guns to their sort of secretive quest in the vaults of the British Museum.
Yeah, I like it how Ethan doesn't play it down and doesn't shoot him down, so to speak. I love how he kind of plays along with him anyway. It just shows a nice kind of, kind of friendship between the two and a camaraderie. So again, that just all adds to the fact that, later on we know that Lyle is not 100% loyal to the group. So
absolutely. I was saying to John that I read the portrait of Dorian Gray in between the first and second parts of our discussions on Penny Dreadful, and this is the kind of playful discussions that you have between some of the characters, between Dorian and his benefactors, I suppose, or his group of friends. This is the kind of playful discussions that you have, where there's lots of, not even sexual tension, it's just lots of sexual innuendo discussions between them, where they just banter back and forth all the time. It's sort of innocent, but also there would be a possibility that Lyle would absolutely jump Ethan if he given the opportunity as well. So I love the banter between it. It's part of the fun of everything that's going on, and I love that Ethan plays into it as well. I think that's quite fun because of obviously the relationship he had with Dorian Gray in season 1 as well. So Lyle seems to be a favourite character of everybody. You see as he arrives for dinner, you see Vanessa going, "Oh, our guest is here," and getting Ethan and bringing them downstairs, and everybody's excited to see Mr. Lyle when he arrives. I think everybody likes the character. So seeing in episode 2 of season 2 that he's not working directly with them, he's also working against them. Obviously being forced by Evelyn Poole is kind of sad for all of us watching, I think. Because we like the character so much and just hoped he would be the foppish, funny one in the corner as the episodes went on. So it's a bit sad, but as I say, at least he's allowed to continue to work with them, and he won't be steering them off all the time. So.
Yeah, definitely. I do like it as well when they do go to the British Museum, where they're kind of, he's about to go down into the vaults, and another curator is coming back up, and he just goes, "He's my brother." I think that's really good. And then he's kind of fairly he kind of waves it aside because effectively the British Museum is just a massive pornography warehouse, so second only to the Vatican. So there are people always nipping down into the vaults to get a quick sort of pervy gander at the collection.
I love second only to the Vatican.
Yeah, I thought that was really good. I think and it's one of those things that I liked where I think Malcolm asks if he can bring the Verbis Diablo, these relics, back to his place. And again, it's just a nice little touch around, I suppose the collection of, the British Museum where he goes, plundered wealth from the British Museum is often ignored. I'll just plunder it back to bring to your house. And even just the fact that there's all this pornography or whatever in the vaults, it's the idea that there are curators who decide what people see, and this can very much reflect the society at the time, and I think that's why a lot of plundered colonial artifacts from different parts of the world were in sometimes caused so much excitement, and part of that was down to shock because of some of the images, and then they were quickly, as Mr. Lyle says, then were put back into storage and were ignored or forgotten. So I think that's kind of really interesting here as well. The only other thing as well was the heraldic shield aspect as well, where you had the two prancing wolves on one of them, and there's that nice little conversation between Mr. Lyle and Ethan, not one that isn't banter driven, but more just saying that these totems are of defense. Most people think that they are to instill fear into the enemy, but actually it is more about the defense of these creatures for I suppose the families or the individuals that have these totems on their heraldic shields. So I thought that was quite nice.
It's just another level of the mystery for Ethan as well, unraveling it. And him telling about that story about the timber wolves as well. But it's good. It's I like how they they add little bits of this just to give you a little bit more sense of Ethan. He's not totally forgotten with he's got a big role in this season, but
absolutely.
But how everything ties together. Everything's really well integrated. I love that. I love that scene. Yeah, John, you, that guy, the look on the guy's face when Lyle says, he's my brother. He's, skullduggery's not my forte. I'm not into this.
It is. It's the other thing I've forgotten when they're talking about the shields and the totems. And he goes, I looked up my family totem. It was two interlocking fish on a field of lavender. And it was like, it could only be that. And he goes, fish. He's kind of like, why fish? The power of fish on a field of lavender. Oh my goodness, that I just cracked up. I thought that was hilarious.
Is this where I tell you that my family crest has got a fish on it?
I know it does, but not on a field of lavender. You've also got a bloody fist.
We do have the red-handed Ulster on our family crest as well. There you go. But no, a really good scene. I did get the impression that this may not have been the first time that somebody caught Mr. Lyle going into the bowels of the British Museum with somebody else that he may not have been taking with him. So I did see the reaction of him being called his brother and he kind of going, you could have said friend or cousin or something. This guy is definitely not your brother. Is that it about Ferdinand Lyle? I know it's a shocking moment that he's working for Madame Callion or Evelyn Poole. Is that it about that point, right?
Yep, pretty much.
Good stuff. I'll go on to the other moment in the episode, and I think we've talked about the poetics of the character of Caliban before. The moment where we have Vanessa and Malcolm going to feed the poor and sick of London, I think is a really good scene because I like the essential idea that Vanessa needs someone to take care of her because of everything that's been going on. She feels like she's going completely crazy, I suppose. She asks the question, is this what is crazy? Your deepest, darkest fears coming out and living in the world. And I like the idea that Malcolm goes, well, if you need a little bit of sanity in your life, go here and be selfless for a while. I think that's a really nice touch. and she meets up with Caliban. This is the first time these two characters have been on screen together, and possibly two of the most interesting characters of the show, having this philosophical and religious debate, I suppose, in a way, as they meet each other. I kind of like the idea that Vanessa owns up to the fact that this wasn't a selfless act for her at all. This was an act that she was doing to relieve herself from some of the pressure and tension in her life. And being able to meet someone like Caliban is really helpful for her, where she talks about the fact that she hasn't essentially turned her back on God, but they haven't really talked very well in a while, kind of thing. And then she gets the perspective of someone like Caliban, who believes in poetry more than in the books of religion. He kind of says, well, I've read the Bible before, and then I found Wordsworth, and I found the beauty of the world and everything that's going on here. And it's diametrically opposed to Vanessa's belief that she has to go through her pain on the world here before she can get to heaven and before she can go to a great afterlife. He's saying, well, we only have one life, and it's the life we live here on earth. And if you don't experience that, then you need to look closer. If you don't see the beauty in people around you, then you need to find some time to look at that, not plan for what's going to happen in the afterlife. I think it's a beautiful discussion between the two of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely engaging, to listen to these two just talk to each other. And just before I mention, stuff about, this discussion of, pagans and, people who find religion, Caliban, he can't complain, can he, anymore about people being mean to him? So many people are so kind to him. Vanessa is just so endearing towards him. I really loved it. It kind of warmed me towards Vanessa again as well. Like she shows no sort of, discrimination towards him, the way he looks. She's very warm to him. Even at the end, she says, "Oh, you've got beautiful eyes," the eyes that even he mentions, I think later on, about how they're not your typical eyes, and they're not beautiful at all. Yeah. But I love this conversation in the sense that, Caliban John Clare talks about pagans have it good because they're free. They're not bound by anything. Whereas people who have found religion, there's this constant fear of the devil or evil. Yeah. And for people that people do good because they're so scared of being evil and doing bad. And so you can kind of understand where he's coming from. Yeah. And the way he puts it is just so well put as well. And they just bounce off each other really well. I really enjoyed this scene.
Yeah, it's really, really good to see the two of them, isn't it? I wonder if that thing with John Clare, with Caliban, I wonder if that opinion he has about the other humans, it is kind of, well, it's obviously motivated by what happened to him with Victor, that he was left alone to survive on his own. And while he has met some lovely people and some people who've been lovely to him, there are other people who have it out for him. Even his new employer, we see that he's going to be using him in his exhibition at some point in the future. That's why he's employing him. But to his face, he's very polite and very nice and gives him a great job. But behind his back, he's going to become a feature in the future, possibly. So that's an intriguing side of the people that he meets. Can he really trust the face that people are presenting to him? And I think part of the opinion he has about being a pagan means if you want to treat people well, you treat people well, and you get payback from that. Or if you treat people badly, they will turn on you. So he will treat everybody around him with respect, apart from Victor, who has reason to treat badly. But.
Yeah, I love this as well. I love this conversation. I think it's two things. It's where, like he's saying, I believe in this world and the creatures that fill it. It's this idea that with religion, you're looking to prevent yourself from heading, down effectively, and you want to promote yourself up to heaven. And so as a result, are you ever really who you are, whether that's for good or for ill? And as you say, Ray, it's that pagans are responsible to each other, not to God or the devil, because they are just playing out who they are naturally, and that responsibility, whether it's good or evil. So I really liked that. And I thought the quote, that he does here, from William Blake, William Blake is a massive character around art and poetry in this period, exploring the idea of religion through his artwork and through his poetry, which Caliban quotes here. For me, again, with Madame Kali's master, you know, the number 666, the artwork at the back of the devil used in the Hannibal series, is massively, influential and well known, as well as God coming out from behind a sun. You know, two massive, sort of pictures, around religion. And then his poetry here saying about finding these heavenly things that we quote around the Bible in the day to day from his poem, Auguries of Innocence.
Right.
So like, this is a really nice quote for me, because I think Blake is like really interesting in terms of what his philosophy, and he was massively influential, at that time. So yeah, I thought this was lovely. It really kind of connected with me, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I do remember that painting now. I remember the episode of Hannibal that it was used in. It was a fantastic like painting, really important to the show to have that kind of thing. And it's great that they've pinned part of this episode on that as well. So very cool. Very cool. That's it for my big point. Any notes that we haven't talked about? I have one, just because I want to call it out. Brona, without her Northern Irish accent, getting her London accent. I do wonder, remember we said when we talked about Billie Piper in season 1 that it's not as bad an accent as we remember when we saw it first, her Northern Irish accent. But I do wonder, after the episodes had aired, did they kind of say, well, when she comes back in season 2, we can allow her to speak in her normal accent, so she doesn't have to do the Northern Irish one again.
Exactly.
I wonder if there was a bit of a reaction from the public who'd watched it or something. But I certainly didn't think it was as bad in season 1 this time around as I did the first time I saw it. So I just thought it was interesting they made that choice to give her a London accent again.
Yeah.
I speak like you, creator. You know, I kind of like that. Of course I do. I speak like you because you created me and I'm only talking to you. So.
Yeah, she's very well pronounced now.
Yeah, I think that's a really good, I mean, if that was the case, Derek, I think that was a really good cover up and a good save by the writers, and just saying, because it makes sense. And I bought it as well. And it actually furthers her becoming a completely different character, which is like her new life. So, it works well.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting, calling her Lily. You know, lily flower is very associated with funerals, generally, which I thought was quite good.
Yeah. Her reaction to that as well, I was wondering, and I didn't want to read too much into it, but her reaction to being called Lily, where she says, I don't know why it is, but that inspires sadness in me. We've talked before about her name meaning sadness in Irish, Brona, her original name meaning sadness in Irish. Is that what she's saying when she hears the name Lily and she goes, I'm thinking of sadness, I'm thinking of Brona?
Possibly, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Big note I've got, I kind of, with all the scorpion stuff being, and we see it at the start of this, where, Vanessa's sort of painting the scorpion with her own blood on the floor, and we see it again here. So I decided to have a quick look into the scorpion motif, because it's not just from this episode either. She did have a necklace from season 1, as well with scorpions on it, but we see it in episode 1, this episode in episode 2, and then in the next episode, there's other versions of the scorpion done by, the cut wife of Ballantrae Moore. And so I was kind of like looking into the meanings, and also I have Scorpio as my star sign. Not that I necessarily take too much credence in that, but it's it very much stands for passion, sex, but also change or transition and death. And also for protection, so almost a protection totem, which is certainly used in the next episode, but also of being alone, which really speaks to I suppose maybe the feelings that Vanessa has in some cases.
Well, she's trying to use it as a protection on the floor, isn't that what she's drawing in the floor in blood is to try and protect herself?
And so I was looking at the Egyptian aspect of this, just given last season, and also relates to death, and also in Rome and Greece it's associated with death because a scorpion sting killed Orion. But in Egypt, whilst it relates to death, it's also associated with the journey to the afterlife and the protection of the body and the viscera, and accompanies them on that journey to the afterlife. I think the other great thing is that it's also the name of the king, as well as another great historical movie, The Scorpion King with The Rock.
I was about to say.
Which, I presume is totally accurate in how the Scorpion King arose.
Yeah, the only thing inaccurate in that movie is the special effects to stick his face on top of a big scorpion, which is awful. I still remember how bad that was.
Can you imagine that, being king in Egypt with like a stingy tail and some big claws?
Yeah. Until the giant boost comes along to step on you.
Yeah, exactly. So
very interesting.
Yeah. So I thought that was all, it's pretty interesting, because it's certainly a big feature it's brought more up front, I suppose, in this second season, compared to the first. So, I thought that was, I thought I should do a little bit of reading around that. Yeah.
I like it. Ray, anything from you? Any notes that we've left out?
I had just one on Angelique as well. I thought, she was a very interesting character, very consistent, I guess, with Dorian's excesses in the fact that, this is more of a obvious translation of Dorian being drawn towards someone who, I guess, is on the fringe of society, will generate a lot of talk and controversy, scandal, and so he gets drawn to Angelique, and they start something as well. So very interesting to see. Again, I can't really remember where it goes because from memory, Dorian has so many excessive kind of bouts throughout the season. So I'm not sure. I can't remember where this one goes, but it's interesting to see Angelique and she the confrontation at the cafe. There's a nice little dialogue between the two, just getting to know each other.
Yeah. I love the dialogue between the two of them. I like that it's still connected with Dorian, looking at the photograph of Vanessa as Angelique approaches. Yes. Angelique, no surname, as she approaches, I love some of the banter between the two of them where Angelique says, I tried coyness once, I just couldn't carry it off. This feeling that she is quite similar to Dorian in some ways, saying to him, youth suits you, don't ever grow old. Kind of thing. It's something that he's probably heard many times, and as we know, he doesn't grow old. That is his central function, is that he doesn't ever grow old. So, intriguing to see what happens with these two characters. It's certainly someone that Dorian will enjoy being around. He kind of needs to have that enjoyment in life. That's what he's always pursuing. So,
well, we see that he is going to enjoy Angelique for sure, I would say. I like that she says, try not to think too much, stay simple but beautiful. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Absolutely. One note that I have as well, that I thought was quite interesting here. How old is Evelyn Poole? Because there's two comments that she makes in this episode. She says, when she's with Malcolm going off shooting, she references not being this happy for eons. Eons is not something that many people would say. They'd say, I haven't been this happy in years, but eons is a very specific word. So
definitely.
You wonder, is she, 1,000 years old? Is she another person is this why she's sacrificing things to keep up her own youth? Is she another person that has transcended time?
Well, she's a good aim on the rifle range. She certainly beats Malcolm. I love that. Also, just inquiring about how she may get further acquainted over the shooting of these guns. It was a nice little conversation, very pointed between the two of them, which I thought was good.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to see a bit more of Malcolm in there. My last note for the episode is just because the episode is called Verbis Diablo. I had to have a look at that. It's obviously not a real language. It is made up for the show, but it's created by David J. Peterson, who created Dothraki and Valerian for Game of Thrones. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So what he does say is that it's impossible to teach, because it's supposed to be something that lands with you from Satan, from Lucifer, when you hear the voice of the devil. So it doesn't have a structure to it the way most languages would have, but he's developed a sort of structure around it so that the actors can at least speak their lines, but you couldn't translate it into English. That's the way he created it. But I love that it's someone involved in Game of Thrones who's
that's great.
Very heavily involved in that.
Yeah. I mean, hats off to the people that do the subtitles to that then. So they must know.
Exactly. Maybe they're just being spoken to by Lucifer when they're writing the subtitles.
Exactly.
Is that it for notes on episode 2?
The only other note I've got is, and I think you brought out in your point, Derek, just that change, in Malcolm and Vanessa's relationship from last season.
Ah, yes.
It's a bit, it's changed in that, so Malcolm does say, wherever we walk, we'll walk together. He made his choice in, the Grand Guignol Theatre, in shooting Mina. And that there's a more supportive Malcolm here. He's still got his ghosts. He's still got, his demons that haunt him. And there's still room to move forward between the two of them. But it's kind of an underlining and saying that, yes, you are my daughter, here, and we will walk together, to combat this, because Vanessa is going in to him frightened, distraught, and needing that support. So I thought that was just an interesting little change.
Yeah, definitely good to pull it out. I think that even in the first episode, the first time you see the two of them together, Vanessa rushes forward to hug Malcolm. And there were moments in season 1 where you felt like she would just be killed by Malcolm if he could save his daughter. But now she is truly his daughter in the second season.
Yeah,
really
definitely.
Oh yeah, he mentions as well, like, I've lost one daughter, I'm not about to lose another. So he spells it out clearly to how much Vanessa means to him.
Exactly. Excellent. That's the end of our discussion on season 2, episode 2 of Penny Dreadful. We'll take a break and we'll be back with our discussion about episode 3 of season 2, The Nicecomers. Hi, this is Derek from TV Podcast Industries. We hope you're keeping safe and well at this time, and hopefully we're providing a little bit of entertainment to get you through some of the boredom that comes along with what's been going on at the moment. If you've been enjoying the podcast, we'd love if you subscribe to us at tvpodcastindustries.com, or you can support us by going over to patreon.com/tvpodcastindustries. You can also support us by leaving a review on your podcast catcher of choice, or of course, you can share the podcast with any of your friends, because sharing the podcast is sharing the love. Remember, we've covered many, many shows over all the years that we've been podcasting. We've covered things like Gotham, The Boys on Amazon Prime. We've covered Pennyworth, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Agent Carter, Luke Cage, Iron Fist. So if you've enjoyed the coverage that you've been listening to, hopefully you'll check out some of the other shows that we've done. And we've got lots more to come. And thank you, as always, so much for listening. Welcome back, fellow Penny faithful. We're back talking about season 2, episode 3, The Nicecomers. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Darklings. I am one of your other hosts, John. I should say fellow Nightcomers, given that's the title this episode.
I like that.
And good evening, Nightcomers. This is Ray. G'day. Hello.
Should we be calling them Into the Nicecomers? Would that be a title for them, Ray?
Oh yeah. Well, I'll take it.
Given that's one of the many podcasts that Ray now covers. I was introducing Ray as the one of the hosts of Into the Night, the Moonlight podcast, one of the hosts of Last Sons of Krypton. But Ray, you've got about another 4 podcasts that you're doing at the moment, right?
Look, just a couple of guest spots here and there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just started a Scarlet Spider one, so quite happy with that one.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that came from a big crossover episode that we did a couple of years ago, that you kind of fell in love with the Scarlet Spider.
It did. Yeah, that kind of that interest blossomed from there, because there was no Moon Knight tie-in issues, so we covered the Scarlet Spider tie-in issues, and yeah, is quite an interesting character. So I've kind of run with it, and interested now to take the journey from when he started way back in, I don't know, the 90s or the 80s or something, all the way through.
One of Spider-Man's clones, Ben Reilly, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
That's about all I know. And that was from our big crossover series, which we did, Damnation, the Doctor Strange series, which actually ties quite well into this episode of Penny Dreadful.
Yes.
Bit of damnation in here for a lot of people as well, right?
Yeah, big time.
Let's get into the discussion about it. This episode was directed by Brian Kirk. I will fill in some details about Brian Kirk because I forgot to write anything down. And once again, written by John Logan. There are episodes that John Logan doesn't write in this series. That's why I'm mentioning that he writes these episodes. We will get to a point where he's co-writing or other people are writing episodes. So I will mention it each time when he's writing the episodes. John, do you want to give us the synopsis for this episode?
Sure. Vanessa recounts events from several years before, when she went in search of answers to who she was. She sought out a witch known as the Cutwife of Ballantree Moor to learn more about her visions. She also wants to help her friend Mina, who appeared to her in need of help. Even at that time, however, Madame Carly wanted Vanessa, though the Cutwife refused to release her. Slowly and patiently, Vanessa learns her craft, but Madame Carly spins her own web, intent on getting what she wants.
So this episode is kind of an interim flashback, isn't it? Because it takes place almost directly after the last flashback that we saw where Vanessa first was visited by Mina. It seems that she didn't go straight to Malcolm, or maybe she did go to Malcolm and then went in search of the cut wife of Ballantrae Moor. But it's directly after the first visitation that she's had from Mina on the beach, where she tells her, please come and save me, kind of thing. And we hear that she now feels like she's been possessed, or that something terrible has happened to her, and she wants to take the curse off herself. That's why she goes to visit the cut wife. So,
yes.
I like the setup of the episode, that it binds the two characters of Ethan and Vanessa together, because he effectively is trying to get her to tell the story to him of what this red scorpion that she's been drawing on the ground is. And that's showing that the two characters are much closer than they were in season 1. There was definitely a relationship there, and he was there at her side, but now he's saying to her, if you can't tell anybody else this story, tell me. Which I think is a nice touch to bring Ethan back by her side again.
Yeah, I like, I really like that motif of, the two of them sat down in her room. And I like the fact that actually episode 4 opens up with her kind of finishing this tale in the drawing room with everyone else around. It's kind of like during this tale, her and Ethan have brought in other people from Malcolm's house, and the tale has grown larger and larger, so that everyone, I think, ultimately by the end knows this. I think as well, it's like, this flashback, I suppose, it is a little earlier in the series of season 2, compared to the flashback in season 1, which was on episode 5.
Yeah.
But I like that they don't start with this, that they, it's not linear, because, I think certainly in season 1, a flashback like that would have kind of given a different tone to the show, possibly. I think again here, this is nicely placed, I think, with the events that have happened in the previous 2, and with what's to come. So, this was good to kind of get the connection of witchcraft into Vanessa's life, and how that links to her struggle within herself, but also at the time with trying to help her friend Mina.
Yeah, I think also one of the big things for this is we've seen these kind of flashback episodes before on all the TV series and stuff, and as you say, John, it's very well placed, but a lot of it rests on the shoulders of the actors, the two of them themselves, Eva Green and Patti LuPone. They do so well in this, and for them to carry the whole I mean, of course there are other characters there like Sir Geoffrey and Evelyn Poole as well, but for the most part it's just the two, and the relationship with the two as well, all the way from when Vanessa actually goes to the front door and the cut wife is suspicious of her, all the way through to the relationship kind of growing, until they become actually great friends towards the end.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with John Logan's script, which is well written, but the performances, my gosh, I guess for me, it has really elevated the season, in as early as episode 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really, really good. And Patti LuPone is just fantastic in this episode. Really, really good. John, do you want to kick us off with your main point from the episode?
Yes, by the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. And whilst the cut wife of Ballantrae Moor is talking in some cases about the arrival of Vanessa to her door, but also, I suppose it could be looked more generally around, Madame Carly, who certainly pricks up in this episode as well. I'm relating this to the angry baying mob with pitchforks, that come for her, come for the witch, known as the cut wife of Ballantrae Moor. And her name is actually Joan Clayton. But I found this really, emotional. It's that angry mob. It's the illogicalness of it. It's the sense of the fears of people being whipped up, in this case by Sir Geoffrey, effectively because of his own impotence, which is really, dare I say, hammered home or whipped home by Mrs. Poole, in their kind of motivating bondage session, where she's really feeding him, the idea that, she's emasculating him, really, making him that he will seem servile, by letting his cattle die and effectively his estate to die, because what we know is that the cut wife has land that's been bequeathed to her, and he wants that, and she won't sell. Whilst this own web that we were talking about that Madame Kali is spinning she is causing the cattle to die. There's a great moment where she's walking through the field. It's seemingly just touching her, but again, it's her little assassin sort of, pins from her ring, where she's obviously putting some kind of poison, to kill the cattle, but she's really trying to drive home the idea that he's weak, he's become impotent. And that's what he is using, to effectively bring, the village folk to his service to go and, I suppose, call time ultimately on the cut wife here. This is really something driven by Mrs. Poole. And I like the fact that there is the moment where he meets with the local vicar, and effectively that this action is given legitimacy by the church. So it is this papacy, and he goes, no, it's sorcery. Yet the kind of transaction that's happening between Sir Geoffrey and the vicar is just purely one of mutual benefit. It's not of high Christian morals or values. It's the fact that, well, you will be out of a job, you won't enjoy the lifestyle that you have here in this village with your vicarage if this continues. And the same applies then with the villagers who are hired with their pitchforks, where he kind of ruffles them up. I mean, he even sort of brings it back to the Civil War, where they were on the side of the royalists, whereas the land bequeathed to the cut wife is from Oliver Cromwell, the parliamentarian. So it is that they will be out of a job, no one will buy it, really playing on their fears, their real fears. But
I like how his threat as well is about that he'll be fine. Basically, his threat is, I'll just move on. I'll move somewhere else where I'll be able to take my cattle, and nobody else will come here with their cattle, and you will have no jobs. I'll be fine though, kind of thing. So he's rallying them behind his cause, so he will be better off, but saying to them he'll be fine anyway. I think it's a really interesting kind of rallying cry against the people of Devon.
Yeah, and it's just that baying angry mob that can form so quickly. Maybe there's there's a little bit of what could be argued as happening maybe all the time, or certainly at the moment, around politics. But I found this really kind of emotional when they come and string her up by the wrists. They tar her, and then set her alight. And it's the girl who had recently come to her door, to have an abortion, as well. And,
she's the first one that sets her alight.
And she's the first one that cries out, burn the witch, burn the witch. And it's all playing on people's fears to effectively remove her so that, he can get her land. It's for him, it's nothing more, than that. And I found this, really, tough to watch. I did find it quite emotional. I thought the music again really played into the sadness of it all. You have Vanessa as well being branded, but by the villagers from the flames, they heat the iron from the flames of, Joan's burning body. This is tough as well for me. We were talking about the baby in the witch's coven, and the dollhouse from hell. But this too, this feels more real, that this can happen. It's all about whipping up people's fears and directing that hatred. And so I found this really, sad. I think, Patti LuPone, and Eva Green just play this so well, as do the baying crowd. I think it really gives a sense of awfulness about it. And I think the saddest thing about it is there's a line from Joan Clayton where she says, they send their women to me, but despise me for what I do in terms of the abortion. And it is that, you know, they're knocking these women up, but they don't want the children. And so the women come for the abortion. I found this really tough, and I found it hugely charged and emotional.
Absolutely.
And ultimately directed by Madame Carly, Evelyn Poole, as Sir Geoffrey's wife, I think, in this case. I think she's certainly a wife or the mistress. Yeah. I think, yes, as I say, the motivational bondage, speech in the great bedroom of the hall was one where, you see her plan coming together. But again, this sense of embarrassment that she's trying to place on him. And you have Vanessa challenging him previously in the woods, where, he's trying to have his moment with her, trying to rape her, and she bites, his hand. So it's massively charged, this scene around, this whipping up of angry mobs with pitchforks. I just thought this was really so powerful.
And Vanessa makes him scream for her as well, remember? Yeah. So, whatever about Evelyn pushing him in the ways of, what would the people think of you if they saw you like this, if they saw you under my control, which is the embarrassment factor. Even though nobody was around, Vanessa did the same thing to him in that wood as well, so there is this constant berating of this character.
And that just adds to his frustration, I think. And so to take it back, I mean, John, you've covered it so well as well, but just the masterful writing of John Logan to produce with an economy of, I guess, of script and time. This is only one episode. He gets in almost a whole movie in here, and he rounds out and develops all the characters for me. I mean, enough so in that 1 hour time slot to make you well invested in everyone. So, I mean, I'm going to recount some of the stuff you said, John, as well, but some other stuff as well. The first thing with Joan Clayton towards the end, the things that make it so emotional for me is that she finally says her name to Vanessa as well. She says, "My name is Joan Clayton." She hadn't revealed that all that time because I think she makes a comment early on, like, "Are we courting? Why do you want to know my name?" I don't need your name. You don't need my name. Yeah. So she actually gives her that level of respect and trust. There's, as you mentioned, the woman that goes up for the abortion as well. She's the first one to pipe up in the mob to say, "Burn the witch," and it comes from that sense of, as you say, John, that thing of, there being a shame from the townfolk. Yeah. They know that they need the cut wife in the sense to cover their indiscretions. Yeah, but at the same time that they don't like her, that it despise her. So all this feeds into their emotion to, let's just get rid of her because we hate her because we hate ourselves for what we have to do.
What we need. Exactly. Yeah.
And I think it's as well that young girl who had the abortion, the shame is also on her, not on the blokes. And this, this whole burning of, Joan Clayton here it's such a masculine thing. And it's how Madame Carly has spun, that and directed it towards the cutwife here. It's really, really sad.
Yeah, absolutely. And to make it even sadder for me as well, towards the end, we know a little bit towards the end, the cutwife Joan, she's dying anyway. Like, she falls down. She knows she's on her way out, and she says to Vanessa, just let me die, in peace. I know I've been here too long already. Yeah. And there's that tragedy that she could have passed away kind of peacefully in her house, but this mob comes in, and instead she has this terrible, awful death, where she gets tarred and she gets burnt alive. So there's that added tragedy. And I think that's just such great writing from John Logan as well. So he manages to fit all this in, and it all culminating towards the end, and you're just kind of like, oh my gosh. And you feel for Vanessa as well when she's there. I was afraid for her as well. I mean, I know she's in the series, but it's like, why wouldn't they do something to her? Because, that scene of Sir Geoffrey and her in the woods as well, again, just showing something that, makes him feel inadequate, and he gets his revenge at the end saying, "Scream for me." And I was kind of glad that when she was branded, that she didn't actually scream. She kind of just, well, you know.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Every fiber of her being to hold back a scream is what you can see on her face. And it's the true power of the character of Vanessa, really, as well. I know this is a bit of a two-hander episode, so we're probably going to talk about most of these points are all going to be about just those two characters. So, Ray, do you want to kick into your point? Because we're probably still going to have some other stuff to talk about there.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, my point was, the kind of big reveal, I guess, because it was insinuated at the beginning, the cut wife, she is where she is because she was outcast because of what she did. Mm-hmm. She kissed a woman who ended up being her sister. Mm-hmm. And that sister ended up being Evelyn Poole. And that was like, wow. Okay. Yeah. So we get a bit of a sibling rivalry between the two, and the confrontation with the witches, with Evelyn at the gates, or the stones at the front of the house. And the cut wife going to Vanessa's, just stay indoors, I'll take care of this. I found that very compelling indeed. And you see the power of Evelyn Poole. Within seconds, she mesmerizes the cut wife, and she's almost walking out past those stones, and who knows what would happen if she did. But she's saved by Vanessa. So I think this is a big reveal of them being sisters, and Evelyn Poole not aging, and the cut wife obviously aging, sorcery and just, this rivalry. Very cool.
Absolutely. And aging slowly though, because, we do find out, later on that the land was bequeathed to her by Oliver Cromwell in the 1600s. So she's been around for over 200 years. So feeding back into what I was talking about Evelyn Poole being possibly hundreds of years old as well. So, it's interesting to see how she's got herself into this position. Some of the discussions that they have even about, she was a member of the society, a sister within the society, as well as being sister of Evelyn Poole. The rest of the society accepted in Lucifer, followed his teachings, and because she rejected them, they expelled her and they put this life on her for the rest of her time. This moment where even the reveal of her name is something really important. She has accepted the name that the townspeople have given to her, which is the cut wife. That's what she thinks of herself as. Throughout the notes as I was writing it, I was like, are they going to give us a name for this person? But it's just cut wife, because that's the name she's accepted upon herself. So that moment where she reveals, I am Joan Clayton to Vanessa, is a massive moment, because it may have been the first time in decades, centuries even, where she revealed her actual name to anybody else.
Yeah, I, as you say, there's that mention of 1644. There's potential she's even older. When she's being mesmerized there, she says, Madame Carly says, come to me, sister, let's kiss and coil like adders in ancient Egypt. The power of those words, I thought was really, really nice. And we get this backstory of these where they were day walkers, and turned to night walkers as they followed Lucifer, with promises of power, youth, love, and wealth. So, probably one of the reasons why Evelyn Poole is still so youthful here. But yes, they are probably centuries old, if not millennia old here. These two witches. So I thought that was I just thought that was really good. And I like the little backstory within this episode around the day walkers and night walkers as well.
Yeah,
kind of reminds me a little bit of Blade, with the day walkers.
Yeah.
Yes. Blade the day walker, yes.
Very different.
Yes, very much so. I suppose let's go on to my point. My major point for the episode is just Joan Clayton offering Vanessa a new life, her life. She's offering Vanessa the opportunity to take over from her as the cut wife of Ballantry Moor. What I like about it is everything that's built up, this background storyline of who this character is. She speaks about the fact that she was not born gifted in the dark arts, not born gifted with magic. Vanessa has been born with that. She's always had it within her from the beginning. But I kind of appreciate that this character has been put in the position, has grown into what is required from the people around her, and that's why she does what she does. She doesn't want to. She doesn't want to be the person that gives abortions to young girls who've been raped, or young girls who've been mistreated by the men of the town and then hated by all the people around there. But she knows it's a needed function, and she knows that if Vanessa does want to hide from the darkness inside her, maybe this is a good place to be. You're on your own. Everybody hates you. You don't have to deal with your life. You don't have to answer any questions from everybody. Stay here, stay in the house. And she gifts the home to her as well. So that piece of land that they were trying to get off her by burning her to death is actually been gifted to to Vanessa by the end of this episode. She is now possibly could have just lived there for the rest of her life and ignored the plea from Mina if that's what she was willing to do. So I like the constant conversation between the two of them where Vanessa's being trained up in these ways and Joan's saying to her constantly, well, you know, you've got I've got all of the abilities that I have now. So does that mean you're going to take over from me? And Vanessa kind of going, well, let me think about it. I have a few more things I need to learn. Let me think about it, you know. But she does have all of the powers of Joan by the end of the episode. And as you mentioned, Ray, she does go to her death, violently, but she would have died quite soon afterwards anyway. So, the fact that she's almost training in her follower, by the end, throughout this episode is important to her, that she's passing on her knowledge to the next generation, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah, the writing's on the wall there, like for her to die soon as well. And there's something very, I guess very generous and very, warm for her to, offer that to Vanessa. But at the same time, it's also very sad. I mean, exactly as you explained, like, you know, you can take over here. Look what I've done and like what I've built, although I don't like it. You know, this is what is for you. Yeah. And it's a very sad thing, like that she's, I don't know. I just felt very sad for Joan that she was offering this. And Vanessa was saying, well, we'll see, you know, not too sure if I want to do it or not. Yeah.
And I think the sadness, as you say, Ray, I completely agree with you. The sadness really comes from her saying, it's not the life I would have wanted, but it's my life. I did whatever I needed to get by and was whatever the townspeople needed. And then the end of it is that the townspeople needed it, but they still put her to death. They still set her on fire and kill her, even though they know that they're the ones that created her being the way she is, you know? So it is a massively sad piece. One final thing that's in there that she offers Vanessa is the Poetry of the Dead, the book, that is to be used in only a moment of dire circumstance. When you feel that you're at the point of death, when you feel you're at the point when everything's over, you can use this to get out of that situation. Now, she doesn't say get out of. I was wondering about that, because is there a point here where Joan could have used the Poetry of the Dead to protect herself from the townspeople, yet she's going to bequeath it to Vanessa instead? Is that something that could have happened there? Or could she have saved herself in some way? Has she done it before? Has she used it? Is that why she's lasted this many years, this many centuries? It's because she's used the Poetry of the Dead before on some attackers and not willing to use it now because she's passing on her life to Vanessa? Just a question there.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw it as a massive kind of get out of jail free card. You know, this is the thing here that you only in the most dire circumstances. So I assume that she has never used it before herself, and that if she had used it towards the end when she was being, you know, captured by the mob, whether that would have helped at all, because, apparently, I don't know. I'm assuming that the price for what she has to pay for, if she does use it, would have been just so immense. So, I see it. And kind of that Poetry of the Dead floating around now is a pretty juicy carrot.
Yeah, it is. And I had to rewind and pause a few times on the scene where Vanessa's packing up her stuff. She gives a glance at the book. As everybody can see, it's a very specific glance at the book, and then it cuts to her bag. The book is not inside the bag when she's there, but she does pick up the tarot cards and takes those with her. Tarot cards being very important because we saw them in the first episode of season 1. These are things that are very important to Vanessa. But she does seal up the house as she's going with her emblem, with her scorpion emblem in blood as she leaves her home, effectively, because this is the place that she owns now. She seals it up so nobody can enter. Nobody who's not exactly human can enter the home, I think. So I presume this is where she's going to be going back to later on in the season to pick up the Poetry of the Dead book. Yeah, this is going to be the quest item that she needs to.
It could be, because she will be changed forever, I believe, is what she says. Yeah, I know. It's I thought this was this idea of offering her the new life, associating that with the name. You have this black box as well, where to begin with, I didn't really think it was just going to be the deeds to the land. I thought it was going to be some kind of like cool dagger or something like that. But
now you have your own ring dagger to kill anything.
Exactly. But ultimately, it's just her transferring the land into Vanessa's name, which I thought was kind of quite nice. And yeah, like yourself, it was, did she take the book or didn't she?
But it's keeping the land out of the hands of Gregory. I think it's so interesting, because that's the whole impetus of what he's been going after. The whole thing that Evelyn's been going after is getting their hands on this land out from underneath Joan. And she dies gruesomely and leaves the land to somebody else that also has all of her powers to protect the land from them taking it away from them. So I thought that was a really good touch.
I think as well, it's, you know, she goes, you'll bring spice to my last days because, you know, you're in danger and you bring danger here to my home.
I'm old. I just need a bit of spice, but you're in danger.
I felt your danger and that's where I just think this is, she takes her in nonetheless. And in a sense, it's this last sacrifice of herself to pass that torch on to someone who can stop her sister. Mm-hmm. You know, her sister is quite derogatory to her. She goes, look at how you speak. You're like a talking potato, which is kind of, okay.
That's harsh.
It is pretty harsh.
I have to say another thing we should really compliment, Patty LuPone on is the way the language is written within the episode. Is the structure of her sentences and how the words are put together is very different from standard English. It's not old English. It's not something you could learn other than from reading the script and saying the lines, if that makes sense. And she just does such a good job of getting her point across without using exactly properly English sentences, I suppose. It's something that stands out within her pattern of speech, that she's able to get across how angry or aggressive she is, even though she's not using exactly the way the words should sound, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah, no, she delivers the lines effortlessly. Mm-hmm. It is like just the way she speaks. But she conveys it very well. I can't laud Patty LuPone's performance enough. I think it was really good. Such a strong piece. And it's interesting, as we mentioned, that she turns up later on. Down the track.
Yes. I don't know whether we mentioned that in the recorded part of the podcast, but we will be seeing the actress back on the show, which we mentioned off the left. I think we actually will see her back on Penny Dreadful City of Angel. I think I caught that she's been confirmed for an episode or two of that show as well, because she's still a working actor. She's still somebody that's done some other great roles after her time on Penny Dreadful as well. So excited to see her back in the future. That's as much as we're going to talk about our main points of this episode. Any notes that stood out to you for the episode? One that stood out to me, since I'm Irish, one that did stand out to me was as Gregory is whipping up the Devonshire locals, he said to them, you don't want to become properly like the Irish, digging out potatoes with your fingernails while your children die, and that's what makes them rally against the witch. This is around the time of the Great Potato Famine of Ireland, which killed, lost around 6 million people in Ireland at the time. So this idea of a landowner in Devon telling the people of England, effectively, you don't want to become like the Irish, because effectively the landowners are what turned the Irish that way, turned them into people that had to work the land rather than take care of their children. So this idea that he's using that as a way of whipping up this evil sentiment within the locals is just fascinating. I think it's a really good placement of history, I suppose. Yeah, stories that they may have heard about from other people as well. So it's an interesting one. Anything from you, Ray? Anything that we haven't talked about in the episode? Just
a few little small things. I like the nods to the references. I think you touched upon it, Derek, of the previous seasons. So the tarot cards we see now, the tarot cards which were in season 1, episode 1, and also Nightshade. So the Cutwife shows Vanessa some Nightshade in the forest there, and viewers will remember that Vanessa calls that out to Dorian Gray when they're in the gardens. So again, I like this kind of tying it in with the previous seasons. One of the other ones, a little bit more comical for me, was there's a scene where the Cutwife, she kind of reproaches Vanessa and she whacks her on the head. I don't know if you remember that. The expression. Yeah, the expression on Eva Green's face, either they acted that so well, or she generally didn't realize how hard Patty LuPone was going to hit her. And it was just an absolute shock on her face. But I thought, that was grand. That was really well done. Absolutely. Really love that.
There's a nice moment as well, just after they've hunted the rabbit, and she's skinned the rabbit, and she's putting herbs, and she's seasoning it, putting it in the pot, and she's adding the salt, and Vanessa goes, not too much salt now. And as Vanessa walks away, basically the rest of the hand of salt that she's got, tons of it, she just like slips it into the pot, and looks at it. I thought that was nice.
It's like nobody tells me what to do, whether it's about cooking or about how to live my life. Nobody tells me what to do.
Exactly. Coming to your tarot cards, I had to just, cause she picks the devil, immediately. So within tarot, the devil represents being seduced by the material world or physical pleasures, which kind of doesn't really connect maybe too much with Vanessa, but also about living in fear, domination, and bondage, which, so it's the fear of that Lucifer may, ultimately win and bring her into his bondage, I suppose. So I thought that was a nice consistency of the situation that Vanessa finds herself in. And then the court wife does call her my little scorpion. You're strong-willed and agile like a scorpion. So you really do get that sense again of Vanessa's will. We saw it in her possession in Sir Malcolm's home earlier on. We've seen it in some respects with now encountering these past creatures, or these creatures from her past in the form of the witches, her strength of will to try and overcome them or to deal with them, I think is really good. And the only other thing I had was I thought Sir Geoffrey, he reminded me of the person who played Sir Francis Drake in Blackadder II.
Okay.
No, he's not, but I did immediately think about it. So all the way through this, until after the episode, I was like, wow, this is a real different kind of character that he's playing here. He's such a nasty guy. The actor is Ronan Vibert, but it was Simon Jones who plays Sir Francis Drake in Blackadder II. So just a little sharing of my confusion with our fellow Darklings.
Just one final point as well, just on my side. I want to, because I have to do it, the music, towards the end, we get the familiar Penny Dreadful theme.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know about you guys, if you had that same feeling, but there was just kind of welcome, feeling of familiarity with the theme. After I've gone through this whole journey of this episode, with only Vanessa being the person from the whole series, but just transported to that other world, to hear that theme towards the end, because we know this is the start of where her adventure begins.
Exactly.
Heading to London. Yeah. Brilliantly used. I loved it.
Yeah, it's like as if now you can turn on season 1, episode 1 and understand the whole season far better from her perspective, what she's gone through to get to that start of season 1. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
The only final note I have is, I suppose, the controversial figure of Oliver Cromwell. I love the fact that, Joan talks about his warts on his face, which he was very well known for, which coming from a witch is kind of interesting, because the usual image is of witches having warts across their face. Yeah. But he leaves her the land, and she just makes the reference, she had no love of the royalists as they had none for us poor folk or women folk. And I suppose Cromwell obviously didn't have any love for royalists either. But, yes, controversial figure, I suppose, given the Irish connection.
Exactly.
And what he did in Ireland as well.
He was seen very differently in my history classes than he was in the UK history.
Yeah, no, it is. It's that real interesting point about the perspective of history, because, I suppose in England, at least, it was about forming the supremacy of Parliament. In Ireland, it's effectively about conquest, because at the time, the crown was England, Ireland, and then there was Wales. Yeah. Wasn't Scotland just yet. So yeah, a troubled, long political past, I suppose, within, Britain and Ireland. But so it's kind of interesting. Interesting figure, if not controversial, is Oliver Cromwell.
I've got one last note just to mention. Because of the reveal of Joan Clayton's name at the end of the episode, there were a lot of questions over, was that name massively important? For my part, during the episode, it's explained why she doesn't reveal her name till the end, because she has adopted the name that's been given to her by the villagers. But I just liked one of the theories that I saw about this right back from the time that the show was on air. One of the theories was that the name was important because maybe she was Joan of Arc, that she'd lived from the 1400s. Joan of Arc, famous figure, burnt at the stake. I think twice, if I remember correctly, she was set to fire twice during her life. But interesting that this idea that because Joan's name is Joan Clayton, that she could possibly have lived on for another 400 years and now living in England, with the land given to her by Oliver Cromwell. I just think it's an intriguing theory. I don't think there's anything meant, in the show by it, but just thought it was an intriguing one.
Well, she's got the short hair as well. So
yes. Yeah. Exactly. We'll be closing out there for our discussion on episode 3 of season 2.
Yes, I've got no further notes on episode 3. This is a really good episode. Just full of so much layering of these characters in terms of Vanessa, but also the cutwife of Ballantrae Moor.
Yeah, really, really good episode to go back and view.
Yeah, I'd probably, out of all the episodes so far, probably most likely that I'd recommend this to my partner Eve, who hasn't watched the series, but since it's just so well contained and it's a one-off, and it's not that gory, just from just trying to backtrack. No, it's just a really well told story and so many interesting characters. So I can't laud it enough.
Excellent. That's it. We'll take a little break and we'll be back with our discussion about Penny Dreadful Season 2, Episode 4, Evil Spirits in Heavenly Places. Here's a message from Ray's other podcast, Last Sons of Krypton.
I am Connor from the House of El.
And I am Ray from the House of Zod.
We are two of the many, many survivors of Krypton's destruction, and we have made our home in Australia, and dare I say, have become Australians, for better or worse. But we have also decided to read Superman comics, read Superman books, watch Superman shows, cartoons, movies, basically everything Superman, and from an Australian perspective as well. Whether you're a seasoned fan, like me,
or whether you are coming in fresh, wide-eyed and wanting to learn more like me, then this podcast is for you. Join us for our bi-weekly adventures available on all good podcast catchers.
So just search for Last Sons of Krypton, a Superman podcast. We'll be coming to you from Australia or some cosmic dimension, wherever we are that week.
Up, and away.
Welcome back to the final episode in part 3 of our discussion about Penny Dreadful, Season 2, Episode 4, Evil Spirits in Heavenly Places. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hi there, fellow Darklings. I am one of your other evil spirits, John.
And coming out of the wall, I am your third co-host, Ray.
Yes, you have a great wallpaper complexion about you.
Thank you.
That's so weird. I just kept thinking, what if they stood in front of a white wall for a second? Would they match in with it or not? I'm not really too sure. but no, of course they would. Yes, yeah. I'm sure they would pick that before. It's like, oh shit, I've just walked past the white wall. Oh, they're going to see me. Anyway.
Well, their ankles were probably white to go in with the skirting board.
Very good, John. Let's get into our discussion about this episode, the final episode in part 3 of our Penny Dreadful discussion, episode 4 of season 2. Evil Spirits in Heavenly Places. This episode was directed by Damon Thomas and written by showrunner John Logan. John, do you want to give us the summary of this episode?
Sure. Having recounted her tale of the cut wife, Mr. Lyle tells them what he found in the artifacts from the British Museum. Inspector Russ continues his investigation into the killings at the Mariners Inn, but finds the sole survivor has no recollection of what happened. He also investigates the murder of a young couple whose baby has apparently been stolen. He notes some similarities with the earlier killings. At Putney's Waxworks, John Clare spends time with the blind Lavinia. A chance encounter is nothing of the sort for Ethan when he meets Hecate Poole, while Victor Frankenstein asks Vanessa to help him buy clothes for Lily, who he passes off as his distant cousin. Dorian Gray introduces his new friend to the latest fad sweeping London.
Ah, yeah, she's my cousin, my second cousin, my fifth cousin, my kissing cousin. Can we just say that? If you see me kissing my cousin, it's my distant cousin, Lily, right?
Well,
I do love Victor in this episode. I think he's very fumbly over his words. Very, it kind of reminds you of the kind of Hugh Grant Britishness, that you have in those romantic comedies.
Well, it's the conflict of being a second cousin, but with his precise measurements around, her height, shape, hips, and bosom for the dress.
True.
That was kind of like, ooh, okay. Yes, he is a creep. I do like the fact that he seems redder around the eyes as well, so I wonder if he's upped his morphine count. Certainly in anticipation of going dress shopping with Vanessa. He probably should have taken Angelique with him as well.
He doesn't know Angelique yet. Sorry.
No, that's true. He doesn't know Angelique yet.
Let's get into the discussion about the episode, guys. John, what's your big moment from this episode?
It's the puzzle of the Verbis Diablo. I just really like this kind of an evil, hellish jigsaw puzzle. I don't know how you write on a butterfly wing, but nonetheless, he managed. Brother Gregory, in all his saintliness, was able to write on a butterfly wing.
It was a massive butterfly.
It was, but I was just like, with what? I just assumed he would destroy the wings. But I like this puzzle here, that the languages are changing from relic to relic. It really gives a sense of that, sort of ancientness, as they're kind of moving between, Sumeric, Persian, Latin, Aramaic, Greek, all these different things, this change in language. And so they're having to piece together this puzzle, to get the full text that is being given. And you have Mr. Lyle kind of saying this is the devil's autobiography. There's a great moment with him and Malcolm sort of trying to make headway with the decoding of this, Verbis Diablo, where, he talks about the devil's autobiography, but as Malcolm says, what's the point in him just simply recounting stuff that has happened through this Brother Gregory back in the day? Is it not also to be some kind of rallying call for his followers of being something that is to come, presumably around Vanessa? But I really like this little investigation with these two. I also thought as well, you mentioned it earlier as well, Ray, around whose side is Mr. Lyle on in terms of him showing up in Madame Carly's kind of comfortable abode. I'd say it'd be a little freaky going for sort of evening dinner around there with the old the bones all hanging on the walls. But I kind of liked here that whilst they are discussing dalliances, that he is warning Sir Malcolm to proceed with caution with Evelyn Poole. And at the same time, we just don't know to what extent some of the things, he says, well, this is the devil's autobiography. Is it that he was trying to mislead Malcolm into thinking this is just sort of him recounting, or the devil through Brother Gregory recounting what he's done, how he came into being, whereas Malcolm maybe is clued in enough to kind of take it further and beyond that. So is he trying to, purposefully retard this solving of the puzzle? And yet at the same time, we do know he is weak and he is under threat. He is in fear of his place in society if these pictures ever come to light, in terms of his wealth, in terms of his marriage. So, that is a huge thing that is going to motivate him in that sense. But I do like the fact that here he still does provide some kind of warning to Sir Malcolm about Evelyn Poole. Whether it's enough of a warning it is another thing. I do like the fact that these dalliances, again, just bringing out the lighter side of Mr. Lyle, whose first name is Ferdinand. I think we find that out in episode 2, don't we, or something, his actual first name. I've always ever known him as Mr. Lyle. Right. I like that the dalliances are coming about by, Sir Malcolm meeting, about him and Ethan in the British Museum. I thought that was quite nice. He goes, but dalliances can be overly Byzantine. And he goes from Stoke-on-Trent to Budapest. So yeah, Stoke-on-Trent is just like an interesting industrial town, shall we say, very different from Budapest. So I like that sort of contrast of a very industrial place like Stoke to Budapest, which is fairly romantic and you know, a sort of a almost like Vienna in a sense in terms of the architecture,
and known for its steam baths and bathhouses.
Exactly. So I liked his lightness of touch. I think that's what he brings is Mr. Lyle, this lightness of touch. But obviously, Malcolm then does mention about his dalliance with, Mrs. Poole, which immediately causes Mr. Lyle to react, with his caution. So again, I just feel maybe he's a little grey here as Mr. Lyle. I'm not saying he's not, probably trying to disrupt this group, almost a bit like Fenton, but maybe more subtly. But I think he certainly has a soft spot. I was going to say a hot spot then. He has a hot spot for Ethan and a soft spot for Sir Malcolm. That's it. But yeah, and I like this.
I think he's doing what's within his abilities. He's not ruining their way of putting together the puzzle as such, but when it comes to the personal nature of the relationship between Sir Malcolm and Evelyn Poole, he's just cautioning him. Like, he doesn't give him any specific instructions to stay clear of her. He just says to be careful, you know, the kind of advice that any friend would give, you know. We didn't really point it out because there's so much to talk about in the series. We didn't really even point out the moment earlier on in the season when Sir Malcolm met Evelyn Poole in the perfumery, and she seems to have enchanted him with some form of a spell that she has bound Sir Malcolm to her. So is anything of their relationship real at all, or is it just the binding that she did back in the perfumery? He seems to feel that they're courting of sorts, but would Malcolm have ever gone out to court someone this soon after leaving his wife? We know that he's had his own dalliances with many women over time, but would he actually go out in court for a new relationship, knowing that he's still married, I suppose, is the interesting part, if it hadn't been for that moment with Evelyn.
Yeah, it's quite strange as well, because he does make mention how bound he is to the duty of marriage as well. He mentions that to Evelyn Poole as well. So I don't know whether, he is obviously mesmerized by her when she speaks that Verbis Diablo in his ear, and I don't know whether there was something in the perfume or that was just to get him close. But, I don't know, it's must be a very subtle kind of influence, because he still holds true to a lot of his beliefs as well. But he does seem to be slowly kind of drawn towards her. With the warning that Ferdinand Lyle gives to Sir Malcolm, I kind of took it that he mentioned earlier in a previous episode that skullduggery is not he's not very, he can't be deceptive at all. So I think he's just not doing, I think he can't do that. And he obviously has concerns for Malcolm as well. So that's come out. I didn't when they were looking at the relics, I was looking for anything to show that he was trying to mislead Malcolm in any way. I couldn't really see it at all. So
I'd agree. I think they're just trying to solve the puzzle together. Listeners of TV podcast industries who've listened to us for a couple of years now might remember that one of our favorite reality shows that we talk about on occasion on here is Survivor. That we watch all the time. We've been watching it for 20 seasons now, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
And I love this aspect in the episode. It felt like they were doing a puzzle from Survivor. It felt like they were putting together one of those big puzzles that's going to keep them immune from the oncoming slaughter in the future. So I just had that thing in my head where it was like, okay, everybody's working together. You know, Ethan's going to take the Latin over there, and Malcolm's going to take the Aramaic or the Greek, and then we also have Mr. Lyle using his extra abilities and all the rest of the languages to get the other parts of it together, you know, and they're going to build this great puzzle on the floor at the end of it. So it just felt like an exciting moment, even though it's just reading text. They've turned it into this great exciting puzzle that they're going to build.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's to what extent this puzzle, maybe once it's revealed in terms of the full flow of the text, what's the impact of that going to be? It's like, I can't imagine it's going to have Vanessa in ancient Aramaic or something like that that's suddenly pulled out. But it's how this feeds into it. But I think it's really nice that, both in this season and the last one, you have that ancient mythology coming into it. And in this case, it's not simply Egyptian. It's all the different languages because, Lucifer, the devil, is present in all these different cultures in one form or another. Yeah. That he pervades through all these different cultures. It's not simply around the Egyptian one. So I really like that. Yeah. And as I say, I think with Mr. Lyle, I just feel, I think you're right, Ray. I don't think he's got that malicious bone in his body to be overtly awful or traitorous to this group. But he is under threat, and maybe, just maybe, as you said, when Madame Kali kind of just simply said, let them do their puzzle, it will bring them to me anyway. That simply put, he doesn't have such a key role in what is going to happen because they will, in some form or another, make their way to the Coven's den. So, it's interesting though. I just liked his cautioning. I thought, okay, he's not evil.
Yeah, absolutely.
We still have faith in Mr. Lyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very reaffirming, actually. That was a big takeaway from it, that, his allegiance still lies with them. Although, as you say, John, as well, unfortunately, he's the sort of person that would probably be most likely to squeal if you squeezed a little. He's got that character to him. Yeah. But thankfully that doesn't happen. But he does, in a very subtle way, try and warn Malcolm. So that's very admirable.
And I think, just to segue right into your big moment, he is certainly not one for physical violence. He is not particularly good at defending himself. Although, dare I say, are any of them, but in particular, Mr. Lyle does get knocked off his feet somewhat.
He can jump backwards very quickly. That's his ability.
Exactly.
He certainly can. It's a superpower. Ray, with that, do you want to take us on to your big moment for the episode?
Yeah, look, I picked a big chunky one as well towards the end here. It's the attack on the team at the residence of Sir Malcolm. This was really cool. For geeks out there as well, it reminded me a little bit of X2, Attack on X Mansion, just in the sense that you see the witches kind of just milling around, the sense of danger coming, but then it's all on, and you get such really good action here. As you mentioned, Lyle, he kind of gets swatted away without any resistance. I like Simbene tackling one of the witches just without
barreling
any
down
thought
the
of it.
hallway towards them. Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
As Ethan is being overpowered as well at the time, so Simbene coming in to save him is just fantastic. I have to say though, I was saying when Ethan was investigating the wall, that's something that he might have seen. I was like, put down the pot of coffee that you just made, and put it down while you're investigating something sinister might be happening on the wall, because you're going to get covered in burning coffee in a second.
Yeah, I love that point as well. I mean, like he is the Lupus Dei. Yeah. So he has those extra senses, and out of anyone, he would be the one that would kind of, figure something out. So that was a cool touch as well.
Yeah. Well, in Kali's coven, they do say when Hecate has kind of failed in a task that he smelt me. There was something other there. And I like that he's stopping. Something's not quite right, there at all. I do, I was thinking of Predator, actually, Ray, as well, with them coming out of the wallpaper, with the pattern on, that it was kind of like the Predator sort of camouflaging itself within the jungle.
Predator in the 1800s.
Yeah, exactly. And certainly they're difficult to take down. You probably would need one of those massive Arnold Schwarzenegger repeater guns to take these critters down, to be honest, because they're pretty hardy. The only one really where you kind of got a sense maybe she might be in trouble was the one up in the bedroom with Vanessa when she starts speaking the Verbis Diablo, which just kind of seems to check her in mid-flow. But ultimately, I think the damage is done there, where she's got a lump of Vanessa's hair. I really felt that as well when she tugged on it. And is
that going to be added to the doll?
Well, I believe so. Not to have the spoilers, but I think yes, it's to add something of them as well to the doll. So it's not only the baby's heart to kind of animate it, and then you need something of the person. So it is kind of voodoo-y for sure.
Do you know? I have to say the direction of this scene from Damon Thomas was fantastic, because the whole scene, the build up to it, is so boring and so normal. Obviously there is the investigation, the puzzle that's going on inside, but as it pans around the rest of the house, you you have Ethan and Simbene downstairs, making dessert, and then you have you have Vanessa up in her room brushing her hair, and the tension that's there as you see a little bit of the wallpaper move slightly, and then it cuts to another scene, and then you see a little bit of the wallpaper in that room move slightly, and then you suddenly realize the whole house is infested with these 3 witches, all in each room, all preparing themselves to attack, and then it pounces almost unexpectedly as Ethan's looking at the wrong wall, the wall that you had previously seen the witches on. The witch jumps out from behind him. I just think it's so well done. I hope this guy has done some horror work after doing this episode, because he's definitely got a talent for a proper jump scare, not a cat walking past in the background. A jump scare is when you think something is going to attack from one side and it actually attacks from another side. Great job.
Yeah. I think, it was also how it was almost like one of those, remember the images that you had to look at forever, and then all of a sudden a shark would jump out at you, and you had to kind of go cross-eyed.
3D images.
The 3D images, and it was kind of like
30 years to actually see one of those. I still not able to see.
Exactly. It was like Vanessa in the room, and all of a sudden she's kind of squinting, and the person kind of just materializes from the wallpaper pattern.
You know what I thought was interesting about some of those as well? They weren't standing staring directly at who they were monitoring. When that particular witch comes out of the wall, she's actually looking a completely different direction. She's standing sideways and not actually looking at Vanessa. I just thought it was interesting that they weren't just staring at their intended victim. They were placing themselves in a spot on the wall. Maybe the pattern didn't go the whole way around or something.
That's true. I thought Simbene was going to take the cake slicer at one point. I thought one of them was going to die. I think my recollection here was a little fuzzy, because I kind of did think one of them was going to die, in some way. And I kind of was thinking, wouldn't it be great, just because you'd had the moment where Ethan had said buttercream torte was not something I would expect to associate with Simbene. And I thought if he had come sort of raging through, and as he'd sort of rugby tackled her away from Ethan, that he, the cake slicer was just kind of planted into the neck. Maybe. It would have, or sort of, I don't know, suffocate her with buttercream torte by kind of stuffing it up the nostrils and down the ears and into the mouth or something.
That's how I want to
go. Best death ever. Maybe chocolate cream torte for me, actually. I wouldn't mind a bit of chocolate. But enough about cake death.
I actually thought that we were going to see some sort of like the reveal of Simbene, he's been very quiet for a long time.
Absolutely.
So it did surprise me that he was overpowered shortly afterwards, and the witches were still very much stronger than anyone else. But like you, John, as well, I thought one of them would have been offed some way, in some horrific way. But no, not to be.
But I think it just shows how powerful these creatures are, and certainly Malcolm has got some more home improvements to do after his front door was properly ripped out off its hinges by the fleeing night creatures.
Absolutely,
for sure.
Yeah, and really to your point, I think this was the episode. I think they were setting it up for you, Ray. To be honest, with Simbene. That conversation that was going on the whole way through Ethan. Because again, we've said Ethan through season 1 was the eyes of the viewer. He's the one that's asking those questions that we would ask if we were in that situation. And he's just constantly niggling at Simbene going, so what exactly is it that you used to do when you were in your homeland, kind of thing? He goes, things like this. And Ethan goes, I'll take care of these. And he goes, no, I'll take care of them. And Ethan goes, it'll help pay my way. And Simbene goes, it helps pay my way. He's kind of just completely cutting Ethan off, but not telling him anything about himself. So I do feel like John Logan likes to play with his audience a lot, because we don't get a reveal of who he really is. We don't get a reveal of his actual past. What we do get is just some kind of indication that himself and Sir Malcolm have a connection, some connection, and that Simbene is now living in his house in London. And he's paying for his keep, I suppose, by being their butler in a way, and taking care of the family. He feels a lot like Alfred the butler rather than a subservient butler, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, well, we do get to find he was a hunter, but the rest of it's a secret, which is kind of interesting. Exactly. Yeah, I want to know more about Simbene.
Oh yeah, we all do, but I think that's John Logan's trick, that he's hiding it back, and might get it at the final episode of season 3. We may learn something about Simbene that is true to his past, but I think that's something that John Logan loves to do.
God damn it, John. Logan.
There's also like around this whole kind of scene as well, the Hecate gets a one up from Ethan again, so it's kind of like a I told you so, or I'm better than you, from their previous encounter, which was a really great scene of Ethan kind of doing the Vanessa on Hecate. At the very beginning of season 1, he gets her measure and he susses her out, although he totally misfires. He believes that Hecate is an agent of his father, and obviously she's not, but he reveals, he calls her out nevertheless. So I loved it. Towards the end, we see Hecate in her witch form, and she makes some sort of remark about her shoes, and then off she runs. Yeah.
How do you think, are these comfortable shoes, Ethan? Yes, revealing instantly that she is the witch. I think that's a really good touch. You know what? I'm beginning to love this character of Hecate. I love her name, first off. I think it's really interesting. I love that she even criticizes her own name when she says it to Ethan earlier on. But I love the scene between herself and her mother, Evelyn. So I'm guessing there's kind of a conflict in my head, and I'm not certain about it, how they talk to each other, these witches, where, we saw in the last episode with Joan, where Joan was called the sister of Evelyn. And in this episode, we hear Hecate being called the daughter of Evelyn. I'm not too sure whether any of those are actual familial bonds or whether they're to do with the coven bonds. I'm not definite about it, but I do love the scene when Evelyn's trying to sort of give out to Hecate, and Hecate's going, look, you didn't tell me he was a lupus. You didn't tell me he'd be able to find out everything just by sniffing me for a second. So not my fault. And then Evelyn goes, do better next time. And all you get is just this cat-like hiss out of the bells from Hecate, as if she's kind of going, you won't be in your position for long. I'll be in that position soon, kind of thing. So I'm really liking the interplay between these guys. As I said at the beginning of our discussions of season 2, the idea of having the insight into our villains this season, where you see them all interact with each other and hear about their plans before they go out and enact them, adds so much to this second season of the show that we didn't really get from the vampires in season 1. So I'm really enjoying seeing them and seeing some more powerful characters on screen this time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, she's a great character to introduce as well. And yeah, for a while there, at the beginning when she kind of spies on Ethan, you wonder whether there's more interest rather than actually just pursuing him as a target from Hecate, whether she does find him enticing or not. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see with her character.
Yeah, it kind of feels like maybe with that cat-like side of her that she has, maybe she just wants to toy with her food before before killing it. It's kind of what you feel with her. I'm just going to take the final point for episode 4, just because we haven't really talked a huge amount about Mr. Putney and John Clare, I suppose we'll call him now, Caliban, and his discussions with Mr. Putney's daughter. I think there's another great interesting discussion between him and the blind daughter of Mr. Putney, as she does investigate, what color his eyes are. And we hear from John Clare that his eyes are actually yellow. And I like the reaction of the daughter just saying, well, that's really interesting and different.
Yeah, exactly.
Like she does all of the work, in the Putney, Wax Museum. She does the work on the faces. So a nice tie in with the fact that every time she sees someone, she rubs their face to see what they really look like. She uses that ability that she has to create these, lifelike, images of people for the waxwork. But there is a macabre side of this museum. You know, we knew that from the beginning, that he's setting up, the House of Horrors almost, within his museum to compete with Madame Tussauds. But what we hear in here is there's a discussion between him and his wife, which is something that is, I'm sure, going to be fleshed out as the episodes go on, but definitely want to point out here, where he says he's keeping some of his attractions in the cellar all the time because they don't need the light. They're all freaks. And suddenly you start to get a little bit of worry for what might happen to John Clare. Will he get bashed over the head and stuck in a cage to be viewed by the paying public as they come in and out of this area in the future? What's going to happen? So I'm now even more intrigued with their kind of storyline and what's going on there.
Yeah, so you're suggesting that there's actually real life people down?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I got that.
I think.
Okay.
I think it was from his wife kind of going, you're going to keep them down the cellar all the time. And he says, yeah, they're just freaks. They don't need the light. So
yeah, nasty.
I don't think he's talking about waxworks. I think he's talking about actual
okay.
people that he's considering as
nasty.
freaks.
I must have missed that.
Yeah.
Ugh. So Mr. Putney is not quite, he's not in the same league as Vincent from the Grand Guignol.
No.
He's a little dodgier. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So unfortunately, John Clare may have put his trust in the wrong person here.
Yeah, definitely. That's probably going to come back and bite him. I think probably in two ways, not only maybe directly with Oliver Putney and how he will treat him, but it's also, you know, speaking of cats, whilst the cat's away, the mice will play. You know, I kind of like that Victor back in his laboratory. You know, he's still working, I suppose, effectively on Lily. There is an undercutting of Caliban, / John Clare here, from Victor, to Lily. She doesn't feel, comfortable, with Caliban in the same way maybe that she feels comfortable with Victor at this moment, even though, you know, Lily has been reanimated, brought back to life for Caliban. So, I find this, is probably not going to end, too well.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering, one of the things that's kind of popping into my mind as we talk through these episodes, the request or the demand, I suppose, that Caliban made of his creator was to create someone like him who would have to go through and experience life with him, someone that could be a partner because he felt like he couldn't find a partner in the future. Since that time, he has met Vanessa Ives, someone who's had at least an interaction which was kind and pleasant, and she didn't treat him differently to anybody else. And he's also met the daughter of Mr. Putney, who seems to absolutely accept what he's like. She knows what he looks like from her fingers the first time they met, and now knows there's something even more unusual with him with the eyes. So he's met two other, I suppose, potential people that he could have some serious connection with after making the request of Victor to create someone that would be able to look upon him. So I'm just wondering if there's going to be a point where he kind of goes, actually, maybe I was a bit rash thinking that nobody would want to be around me. I found a few other people. You go on ahead, Victor, or do you think it will be as serious because Victor is almost creating Lily for himself in a way?
I think it could be a bit of column A, column B. But I think it's not to underestimate Lily in saying no here. I think that conversation with the dress, where she's in the corset and in the high heels, and she's saying corsets, they are cruel, they're restrictive, and they're only for men. It's for men's eyes that they're worn. And Victor it's almost like he is adding another type of spark, one that's not electrical, but it's that he's giving her the spark of truly understanding men of that time, and how they view women. In that he says, men keep women corseted in reality so that they don't take over the world. And I think this is very much a spark of how Lily comes to view herself. She wants she wants that corset off. She wants to free herself, relieve herself of this dependency around men, and maybe she sees Caliban as part of that.
I think what really does sabotage John Clare's relationships with women is his own perception of himself as well. He's very down on like his appearance, and he still views himself as an outsider. I mean, the fact that he is drawn to the waxworks as well, somewhere that he can be hidden away to do the stuff, just to work away. He doesn't give himself much value. And I think that's what harms his relationships, with, say, Lavinia. I mean, when they did meet up as well, he's very reluctant to let, her touch his face, and he's very reluctant to describe his eyes. So the relationship that he'd have with Lily seems a lot more appealing because she's one of his kind. He doesn't have to feel, like he's an outsider in any sense. Just going back a few points as well, John, to what you mentioned, if we go back to Putney's waxworks and, with Lavinia and the conversation that John Clare has with, I thought that was a very, really very good interaction between the two. Lavinia talks about actually the reluctance of bringing waxworks into the world, for, the massacres and the Chamber of Horrors, how, she feels so sorry for those figures because they come into the world kind of like screaming and in horror. And you can kind of see that kind of parallel with the creation of John Clare. So I like that little touch over there as well. John, you were mentioning about Vincent Brand and the Putneys. When we're introduced to the Waxworks Museum, I got that sense that, okay, this is another Vincent Brand at first, because the actor himself is very affable. He looks very affable, and he does a good job as the series goes on of actually turning and being a little bit more malevolent. So I found that parallel as well with Vincent Brand and the Guggenheim Theatre coupled against the Putney's Waxworks quite interesting too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're hoping, that by Caliban meeting someone like Vincent, he is open to meeting future people like that as well. So has he trusted the wrong person here? And as we go on, we're seeing that he may have trusted the wrong person. John, you recognize the actor from some other stuff as well before. He was in comedy shows before
he was in comedy shows with Rowan Atkinson. I think it was called The Thin Blue Line, which I didn't really watch, but he was also, I suppose, most well known for being in Four Weddings and a Funeral. He was Bernard. He was the guy who didn't really have sex and then got a lot of sex very quickly, with a really randy sort of posh girl, who also didn't have a lot of sex but was sex mad. Bernard.
There you go. You recognized him from other stuff.
That's probably his most well known. But he's a staple of, I think, TV in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. That was it. That was my kind of big moment from the episode about the Putneys. A couple of notes, I suppose, about the episode, anything that we may not have talked about so far. I do want to mention Dorian Gray and Angelique, in this episode again. I love their interplay as they go off to the brand new fad sweeping London. I love the description of it. It almost sounds like they're going to a leather bondage bar. I'm trying to think of the term they use, but it sounds like they're going to some kind of leather bondage bar, and it turns out to be table tennis. So what do we do here? Do we hit the ball one way and then you hit it back towards me, kind of thing? But that's a kind of indicative of how they speak to each other, because both of them are patting that ball back and forth with their discussions. That little patter between the two of them is still there. We have that wonderful moment between the two of them where Angelique says, "I'm very provocative," and Dorian says, "Well, provocation is like food and drink to me," which it absolutely is. This is exactly his character. He'd be the kind of person that would love to walk around with anybody as long as everybody around has their eyes on that person. I love this way, and even during that scene in the room, where they're all playing table tennis, everybody around them starts to look towards them as they kiss, because there's something different about this couple, something different from the old stuffy men who are paying for this opportunity to play table tennis in London. They look around as these two kiss. It's just such a well put together scene. So I really, really like the interaction between these two.
I kind of like the reference as well from Angelique about the electrical lighting. What does that do to a woman's complexion? Even with, Evelyn Poole, she has talked about, I'm a bit of a Luddite. I would throw the wheels into the river. And this idea of technology and, what it might do, that it's seen with suspicion, that it may cause some something bad to you. For Angelique, it's the complexion of her face, but, you know, it's almost a bit like with mobile phones when the radio waves were going to, you know, cook your brain and stuff like that. So, I kind of thought that was just a nice little reference here in this age of rapid change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just had a little note as well. Nothing too big, but, just when you think respect for Miss Ives can't get any higher. She's again done one other thing that makes me just love her so much more. Buttercream tort for breakfast. She has dessert for breakfast.
Fantastic. All the time.
I just love those little, yeah, exactly. It's like, what? Okay, cool.
I do love that little touch of how caring Sabine is for her as well when he's cleaning off her plate and her plate has more food than everybody else and he's instantly worried about her. He's like, oh, well,
yes.
She really does need to eat more. And later on we find out she has dessert for breakfast. So she also needs to eat better as well.
Yes, she does.
John, anything of note from the episode that you haven't talked about yet?
No, it was just, again, I think with the Byzantine dalliances, it's, you know, this is a kind of a bit of a connotation of being Byzantine, and it's really coming not from the time period itself, but there's a negative connotation around it, or it's a connotation of one of maybe a freer time, but it got this negative connotation from sort of later ages, like during the Renaissance and so on. But there's the idea that, it was maybe a little free and easy.
Okay.
Did things that
probably
wouldn't have been acceptable then. So that it was fairly hedonistic, free and easy, and you know, for the stiff upper Victorians, that it was both something to recoil from, but also that they engaged in with their brothels and the like. So I like again that Mr. Lyle, our general foppish, suavish kind of person who kind of likes both, you know, he wants the money of the social standing, but enjoys sort of investigating and researching these Byzantine ways, I suppose, is one to bring up these dalliances.
Yeah. We didn't actually mention that either, did we? That just that call from Evelyn Poole and why she's able to manipulate Mr. Lyle is because all of the money that's been allowing him to pursue this lifestyle that he has is his wife's money. So if she loses her standing, I'm sure she knows about everything that's going on with Mr. Lyle, but if she loses her standing because the world knows about what's going on, he will lose the money and therefore he will just be an old man in the street with a dyed wig. So it's very connected to the money that is being given to him, lets him live this life.
And the other interesting thing, it comes to the vicar actually from the previous episode. So, you know, we've talked about how the arts and the sciences allowed, I suppose, what would normally have been conceived as a misfit being able to express themselves and flamboyantly or be, well, he's that way because of the, you know, he's so knowledgeable in researching things like ancient Egypt or something like that. These ideas of expression, being able to express themselves in a way that society feels is acceptable or normal, even though it's to, in a sense, cover something up. Whereas what I felt with the vicar was that in a sense the church is also part of that at this time, where people could go into the church, but it's one of suppressing who they are. It's not getting up on stage to artistically be, you know, wild and gay or something like that, and for regular people in society to say, oh, but that's what is required from an artist or an actor, or the same way for someone researching these kind of things. You know, the church is also that zone where people, would go to, but it's one of, preaching a creed that maybe is against what is that they should be expressing. So one of repression rather than expression. So, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. That's it for our discussion on episode 4 of Penny Dreadful season 2. And let's close out our part 3 discussion with just a quick chat about what your thoughts have been on the first half or first part of this 10 episode season. Ray, as our guest, what do you think of season 2 of Penny Dreadful so far?
Yeah, really, really enjoying it. I remember first watching season 2. I found it hard to beat season 1. And it just took a little while to adjust to the new villains because it was so well done in season 1 with the vampires and the creatures. So to kind of get your headspace into this other world, but as the 4 episodes that we've covered as we go through it, you get more and more invested. So I'm really enjoying it. It's very strong. As we mentioned, the writing, John Logan's written most of them so far and they're just really well written. He really knows what he wants to do, where he wants to take them all. Yeah. And that's coming through with it. And he spends time with the more secondary characters, which I find very good. It's all about the details and he gives us those details. So I found it so far very, very compelling. And yeah, it's more of a focus on Miss Ives now, definitely. Yeah. But I think they're playing to their strengths with Vanessa, with Eva Green. Sorry. So, it's really good. Highly recommended at the moment.
Yeah, excellent. John, what's your thoughts on Penny Dreadful season 2 so far?
Yeah, for me, it's 5 creepy dollhouse tea parties out of 5, but with a nice comforting wedge of buttercream toast. I think you need that comforting tort of Mr. Lyle. I think it's equal to season 1 for sure. I love how they've, as you say, Ray, they've played to their strengths, but mixed it up in a sense of introducing the witches and giving them a story, so not necessarily keeping them fully in the shadows, even though I suppose things like what happens to the kidnapped baby maybe is something that could have been kept in the shadows. But I think it plays to the fact that the show is compelling, it's uncompromising, it's willing to delve into this darkness of supernatural, of mythology, of folklore, of, big things like good versus evil and how they're not quite as polarized as you may think. So I really enjoyed this. Again, Eva Green, just fantastic. Helen McQuarrie just is totally great as well as Evelyn Poole or Madame Carly, and Patti LuPone was just awesome as the cult wife of Ballantrae Moore, and I think it's just been a really solid start, and I'm just hoping it will keep going that way, to be honest. I also like with Ethan that they're starting to explore his lupus origins as well. And I'm glad that they seem to have a more competent detective on the case with Inspector Rusk as well on the trailer. I reckon he will be a harder nut to crack than the previous one.
I'm hoping we're going to get more of him. These first 4 episodes have had a scene in 3 of them, I think. Just a very small scene talking about this character, having this character kind of in the investigation, but it seems to end just as he comes to a realization about something. And then we're going on to the next episode. We still haven't seen what any of those realizations are. So I'm hoping that we're going to get a good, maybe half an episode of him investigating and tying things together in the future. But for me, this first half of season 2, a great setup for the season. The season's a little bit longer. It's got 10 episodes in it. Last season was only 8. But I kind of love the opening of the season where we have that conversation between Ethan and Vanessa, where Ethan finally is about to tell someone about his lycanthropy. He's finally going to unburden himself and say, there are things inside me, demons inside me that you need to know about as well, Vanessa. And she's like, hold that thought a second. Here come the real demons about to take us off here. He's about to leave, and we get the setup of that. Why he's going to stay is that last time it was just a battle. This time it's the war. So what a great way to kind of take your jumping off point from season 1, bring it into season 2 and make it even more interesting, I suppose, even more exciting. And the characters and actors that are in this season have been fantastic so far with, as you guys mentioned, great writing from John Logan once again. So really excited to get into the second part of this season. This is the last of our 4 episode podcasts that we've been doing for Penny Dreadful so far. We're going to be moving on to 3 episodes for each of the last parts. I say that we've still got another 18 episodes, I think, left to go of our Penny Dreadful coverage, but there'll be 3 episodes per part from now on, going up to the release of Penny Dreadful City of Angels on April 26th. I want to say a huge thank you once again to Ray for joining us for this podcast. Great to have you with us, man.
No worries. It's always a pleasure. This series is just so fun to talk about and so fun to chat with you guys.
Excellent. And you've got the unenviable position of going to bed now directly after this, because it's somewhere around midnight over in Australia at the moment. So sorry that hopefully we don't keep you up with nasty nightmares of the Penny Dreadfuls.
Oh, no, not at all. I'm just going to think of that doll with the goggly eyes and the mouth open.
Yeah. What? It's like the cat meme.
What's that? Exactly. Ray, where can people find you, the podcast, and where can we find you online?
Sure. Check us out on Facebook or Twitter. The handle's pretty easy to remember. It's on Twitter. It's at ITK Moon Knight. This is for the Into the Night Moon Knight podcast. Also on Facebook, facebook.com/ITK Moon Knight. We also have a group there as well, but just send in a request. We're always happy to hear from fellow loonies. Other podcasts as well. Last Sons of Krypton, Superman podcast, LSK podcasts. So Twitter handle LSK podcast or facebook.com/LSK podcast.
Excellent. Hopefully you'll be joining us in future, Ray, for some more episodes
absolutely.
on Penny Dreadful. If our fellow Penny faithful want to keep following the things that we're covering, you can also find us on tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast and anything we're discussing as we're going up to Penny Dreadful. We're also discussing loads of other stuff. We've got Picard still going on at the moment. I think we may have finished that as you're listening on the main feed now. We're releasing these episodes after we've finished our Star Trek Picard coverage.
Yes, I somehow, the cold vacuum of space seems weirdly more appealing than Victorian London with dolls and crazy witches for some reason. Yes.
Excellent. And if you want to get any thoughts in about any of the episodes of Penny Dreadful, give us a penny for your thoughts. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with any kind of discussion points or anything that you remember from your time watching Penny Dreadful. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for joining us for our discussions about Penny Dreadful. We hope you stay subscribed to the podcast. And if you enjoy what you hear, please share it with your friends. Sharing the podcast is sharing the love.
And we all need some comforting love after seeing these witches and their coven.
We'll be back next time with part 4 of our discussion of Penny Dreadful, season 2, episodes 5 through to 7.
As always, fellow Darklings, it has been a pleasure speaking to you in the Verbis Diablo.
I like it, John.
Always remember, keep watching, keep listening, and for this podcast, keep screaming.
Thanks very much for listening, everyone, and from this massive baby heart of mine, I want to say thank you for listening and good night.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.